A violent storm surged above as lightning struck the ground, signaling the beginning of a turbulent night within the downpour. A lone man stood firm, Dan Wusang, a warrior known across the Jianghu as the Fist King, feared for conquering all with nothing but his bare hand. More recognized by his title than his name, he carried the burden of strength and reputation. Yet even legends fall. Wusang had been ambushed by an unknown group, their motives unclear but their intent fatal. Bodies of his enemies lay scattered, evidence of the battle he endured. Now, only 2 opponents remain. Watching from a cliff above, elegant and composed, but unmistakably dangerous, Wusang assessed them carefully. Though unfamiliar, their aura revealed honed skill and lethal precision. Without warning, he hurled the body of one of their fallen subordinates back to them, challenging their presence. One of the 2 descended swiftly. As the fight resumed, Wusang launched an aggressive strike. His enemy's ally cried for help, but instead of rescuing him, the masked swordsman mercilessly cut him down himself. Watching this, Wusang realized his opponent held no loyalty, only cruel efficiency. He acknowledged grimly, this man fought without honor. Dan Wusang's sharp eyes locked onto a faint symbol on his opponent's shoulder, a mark belonging to the demonic faction. His suspicion confirmed, he declared their affiliation without hesitation. One of the masked warriors acknowledged him with confidence, stepping forward with arrogant composure. Despite Wusang's warning, the swordsman launched an aggressive assault, fully intending to kill the Fist King within 10 strikes. The clash was immediate and intense. Blades clashed with fists, lightning crackled around them, and power surged through every move. Wusang countered blow after blow, counting each exchange as the battle progressed. He reached 6 strikes, but something felt off. Though his hits landed, none found a critical point. His opponent remained calm, controlled, almost unnaturally so. A strange force tugged at Wusang's instincts, limiting his precision. He soon noticed the other cloaked figure observing from above, subtly manipulating the flow of battle. Realization struck too late. In the final moment, as Wusang launched what he thought was a finishing blow, the swordsman reversed the momentum. A piercing counterattack landed. The masked man whispered coldly, this would mark the end of the Fist King's era. Blood spilled under the rain as Wusang began to falter. The battle reached its climax. Dan Wusang's final strike sent shockwaves through the air, but it wasn't enough. His opponent stumbled briefly, surprised by the Fist King's strength, but recovered with mocking laughter. Wusang, covered in blood and wounds, struggled to stay standing as the storm raged on. From above, the second enemy watched smugly, confirming that Wusang's power had truly been dangerous, too dangerous to face head-on. The subtle interference from the cloaked ally had made the difference. Together, they mocked Wusang, recognizing his talent, but eager to end. Weakened and bleeding, Wusang collapsed. His body gave out after the 10th strike, just as promised. His thoughts darkened as he lay on the ground, strength fading and life slipping away. Regret lingered. He wished for one more hit, one more breath to continue the fight, but fate denied. The Fist King, Dan Wusang, was slain at the hands of the demonic faction. His legend ended in blood and betrayal. Yet far away, in a safe house on Juhua Mount, a different scene unfolded. A woman tended to someone unconscious. As he stirred, confused and dazed, the question echoed, where am I? Hinting that Dan Wusang's story was far from over. Dan Wusang awoke in an unfamiliar room, confused but unharmed. A woman addressed him as first young master and offered him water. Though startled, he found no injuries on his body. The title puzzled him. It wasn't his. Looking into the mirror, shock overtook him. The reflection staring back wasn't his own. Panicking, he pulled at his face, thinking it was a disguise. But there were no seams or lines. It wasn't a mask, it was his face now. As his caretaker ran to fetch a physician, Wusang was left alone with the chilling realization. He was not in his original body. He scanned the room and pieced things together. This wasn't a scheme by the demonic faction. If they had such power, they'd have already conquered the Jianghu. Instead, he had somehow awakened in a new identity. His strength gone, his movements sluggish, the body was weak. He searched for clues and found documents addressed to Jin Yeon, the eldest son of the Yunha merchant group, known for gambling, women, indulgence. Jin Yeon had been a disgrace. Now Dan Wusang. Once the mighty Fist King was trapped in the body of a useless heir, but his resolve remained. As Dan Wusang pieced together his new reality, the truth became undeniable. He had been reincarnated into another man's body. The reflection staring back confirmed it. Though baffled, he could not deny the memories of his death, nor the clarity of his current thoughts. His identity now belonged to Jin Yeon, heir to the Yunha merchant group. When a worried elder, Gongsun Han, burst in and fussed over his condition, Wusang masked his confusion with indifference. Yet his sharp instincts caught subtle clues: poisoned chicken soup, disguised intent, and a stealthy pulse check. The old physician wasn't just suspicious, he was a threat. Wusang's mind raced. The man had attempted to weaken or kill him under the guise of care. Holding back his rage, he played along, declined the food, and dismissed them. Alone again, he reflected on the Dragon Phoenix martial competition, realizing only 2 centuries had passed, not long by martial world standard. That meant the demonic faction still existed. His clenched fist trembled with renewed resolve. If fate had given him another chance, he would use it well. This time, there would be no hesitation surrounded by enemies. His oath was clear: one punch, that's all he needs to kill them all. After his morning training, Dan Wusang, now Jin Yeon, returned to find a lavish breakfast waiting. Once a frail man who only consumed porridge, his sudden appetite shocked the servant. Now exuding strength and vitality, he casually reviewed the meal and ordered future breakfast to be simpler. His presence, once passive, now carried authority. The servants whispered about his remarkable transformation, unsure of what brought about the change. As he ate, a man named Gongsun Myung hesitated to enter Jin Yeon. Without looking up, gave him permission. Myung entered awkwardly, greeted by Jin Yeon's cold demeanor. Although Myung behaved submissively, Jin Yeon remained suspicious of his intention. Despite Myung's exaggerated greeting and cheerful tone, Jin Yeon was wary. He couldn't understand why this man acted so deferentially toward him. Watching the physician's behavior closely, Jin Yeon contemplated whether he was hiding. As Myung nervously praised Jin Yeon's recovery, he attempted to re-establish a bond, but Jin Yeon cut through the act. He coldly referenced the soup offered, questioning whether it was meant as poison or persuasion. Caught off guard, Myung stammered a defense, identifying himself as the personal physician. Unmoved, Jin Yeon dismissed him. With a single call of his name, he tested the man's loyalty and his truth. Physician Gongsun's cowardice became clearer as he tried to excuse himself without permission. Jin Yeon, now holding Dan Wusang's soul, quickly reasserted dominance, reminding the old man of his plight. Masking his discomfort with laughter, Gongsun tried to recover, but Jin Yeon assigned him a task: to write a letter under dictation. As Gongsun began writing, Jin Yeon's words grew darker, laced with meaning. He mentioned his stubbornly long life, hinting at betrayal. Gongsun paused, panicked, unsure how to respond, but Jin Yeon didn't give him time, slamming a writing tool against the table. He made his point. He was no longer the weakly Jin Yeon. He declared his transformation, his gaze piercing. Gongsun, shaken, asked what he meant. Jin Yeon pointed to the dragon phoenix soup and exposed the physician's deception. A supposed tonic. It was lethal to the sick, and Gongsun had knowingly served it. Jin Yeon's survival wasn't due to the physician's care. It was despite his treachery. Jin Yeon revealed he had caught Gongsun checking for his death. The physician fumbled an excuse, but Jin Yeon pressed further. He refused the soup, dismissed everyone, and made it clear the attempt on his life hadn't gone unnoticed, and it had failed. Jin Yeon, fully aware the poisoning was not a lone act, confronted Gongsun Myung to reveal who had ordered it. But the physician feigned innocence, questioning how anyone could suspect someone like him. Beneath the surface, however, his expression twisted into something sinister. Jin Yeon knew then. This man shamed. Mocking Jin Yeon's suspicion, Gongsun shed his facade and threatened bloodshed, vowing to silence every servant if necessary. But before he could strike, Jin Yeon smashed his face with a decisive blow, stopping him mid-sentence. Calmly, Jin Yeon warned him not to interrupt while he was still speaking. Though his body remained weakened, Jin Yeon's spirit burned with focus. He recognized the urgency of recovering his strength. The conspiracy ran deep, perhaps even tied to the Yunha merchant group itself. No threat, however large, would deter him once he was whole again. But before he could act further, pain suddenly surged through his head. A fierce headache struck him down. The room spun, and images rushed into his mind. Visions he didn't recognize. Faces, memories, emotions. They weren't his. They were Lee Jin Yeon's. For the first time since reincarnation, Dan Wusang realized the remnants of the body's past life were awakening, threatening to blend with his own. As Jin Yeon's mind stabilized, the truth unraveled. Lee Jin Yeon, once the eldest son of the Yunha merchant group, had lived in the shadow of his brother, lacking both intellect and strength. Insecure, he turned to wealth to fill the void, sinking into indulgence and hedonism. By the time remorse set in, his health had deteriorated, and his exile to the villa became permanent. With the original Jin Yeon's memories now unlocked, Dan Wusang finally understood the extent of the body's fall. But in that downfall, he saw freedom. No one expected anything from a discarded heir. He could now train in martial arts without scrutiny. The body, though misused, had innate talent, and paired with his former life's knowledge, Dan saw a clear path forward. As night passed, he discovered a hidden stockpile of precious elixir, resources the original Jin Yeon squandered without purpose. For Dan, they were keys to rapid recovery. The luxury of wealth and materials would now serve a warrior's discipline. Time moved swift. 1 year later, the villa bloomed with spring. A man named INVINCIBLE from the Yunha merchant group arrived, seeking Jin Yeon. As he asked the servants for his whereabouts, a flash of recognition or suspicion flickered in a girl's eye. Something had changed, transformed and powerful. Jin Yeon stunned everyone with his return. After months of intense solitary training, Dan Wusang, reincarnated in Lee Jin Yeon's body, had forged a new path of martial mastery. He cultivated his energy core and inscribed crucial martial techniques into his new vessel: the enlightened body art, the rapid stride, and the white lightning 10-phase art. Each technique pushed his physical and internal power forward, allowing him to reach the 4th phase of advancement. Though progress had been consistent, a sudden misstep disrupted his meditation. A leaf brushed past as his concentration wavered, and his body reacted instinctively, forcing him into a hard fall across the wooden floor. Despite the progress, Jin Yeon realized something vital was missing. He was still not strong enough. Shortly after, a familiar figure appeared: INVINCIBLE, a former subordinate from the guard squad, bringing a letter from the main clan. As Jin Yeon read it, troubling news surfaced. His father had fallen ill, confined to bed, without clear cause. Doubts lingered over the vague explanation. INVINCIBLE revealed what he suspected. The illness was no natural ailment, but a consequence of pressure from the Ouyang clan. Their constant demands for tribute had strained the family beyond its limit. Jin Yeon listened, suspicion growing. Knowing he could no longer ignore the threat looming over his clan, Jin Yeon, still carrying the soul of Dan Wusang, listened closely as INVINCIBLE revealed the Ouyang clan's indifference to the suffering they caused. Even when outside factions challenged the clan, they remained passive and arrogant. The clan refused to meet even basic responsibility, dismissing threats while letting others suffer under their neglect. Their guard captain couldn't even defend himself, leaving their group vulnerable. Among the chaos, one figure stood out: Ouyang Hui, a man with dangerous renown in the martial world. As the layers of truth unfolded, Jin Yeon realized Ouyang Hui viewed merchant families like theirs as insignificant. INVINCIBLE hinted that dealing with the Ouyang clan might resolve much, but he added a more disturbing truth. Jin Yeon's father collapsed after witnessing a sword fight between his own son. The emotional shock was too great, pushing him into illness. Determined not to stand by any longer, Jin Yeon made a choice. He dismissed INVINCIBLE with a calm command and prepared to face the matter personally. His transformation hadn't gone unnoticed. Rumors spread quickly among guards and staff. Han Yop marveled at his new strength. Others laughed in disbelief, mocking the idea that the once weak Jin Yeon could become a martial artist. But their laughter masked on Jin Yeon was no longer the man they remembered. Word of Jin Yeon's return spread rapidly, drawing mixed reactions from those within the estate. Some rushed to greet him out of duty, while others scoffed at the idea of acknowledging someone they still considered a failure. Despite their whispers, no one could ignore the aura of confidence and refinement as Jin Yeon approached the main hall. Seeing the grandeur of the estate again, Jin Yeon marveled at its scale and wealth, realizing how little he understood of it in his past life. He moved calmly through the ground, greeted by maids who quickly stepped aside. His polite demeanor masked his inner thoughts. He wondered why his return lacked any formal welcome from the main members of the clan. Before long, a guard formation appeared with swords raised in salute. Vice Captain Han Yop stepped forward to officially welcome him back, noting how unrecognizable he had become. His commanding presence stunned many, although skepticism lingered among the guard. Jin Yeon responded with surprising grace. Rather than arrogance, he showed respect and composure, leaving everyone unsettled. They couldn't reconcile this Jin Yeon with the one they once mocked. As he clasped his hands and bowed lightly, murmurs spread. He greeted them. The realization struck. This was no longer the Jin Yeon they knew. As Jin Yeon walked toward his father's quarter, Vice Captain Han Yop watched with quiet admiration. The man before him no longer resembled a burden or disgrace, but rather someone he could trust as an ally. Inside the manor, Han Yop informed Jin Yeon that his visit had been announced. As they reached the corridor, the atmosphere shifted. Jin Yeon encountered Lee Ja-eon, his younger brother. Ja-eon's mocking tone returned instantly, calling him names and belittling him before the servant. He grabbed Jin Yeon's arm as if nothing had changed, but this time, Jin Yeon was different. Calmly but firmly, he demanded respect and pushed Ja-eon away, making it clear he would not tolerate being touched or humiliated. The tension between them escalated when Ja-eon turned his anger toward Vice Captain Han Yop, accusing him of siding with Jin Yeon. The confrontation was headed toward violence. Without hesitation, Jin Yeon struck Jaeon across the face with controlled precision. The blow sent his brother reeling backward in disbelief. The room fell into silence. Jin Yeon stood unfazed, his presence now undeniable. Ja-eon, humiliated and stunned, sat on the floor. Jin Yeon spoke coldly, not with rage, but clarity, expressing disappointment. He hadn't returned to argue, but now, confrontation was unavoidable. Jin Yeon twisted Ja-eon's arm with force, smirking coldly, reminding him who the true elder brother was. After the confrontation, Jin Yeon walked calmly through the estate, his presence drawing the attention of several onlookers. Among them was Lee Hwa-eon, the second son and current overseer of the merchant group. Alarmed by the commotion near their father's quarters, Hwa-eon demanded answers. Upon learning the third brother was involved, he immediately assumed Jin Yeon had been victimized again. However, the reality stunned. Jin Yeon appeared composed and unbothered, restraining Ja-eon with ease while brushing off the scolding. The situation baffled Hwa-eon, who had not expected such assertive. Inside, Jin Yeon sat calm while Hwa-eon observed him more closely. Noting the changes, he inquired if Ja-eon had injured, but Jin Yeon dismissed the concern without much reaction. Hwa-eon then witnessed Ja-eon being disciplined directly by Jin Yeon. Swift, forceful, and unapologetic. The message was clear. Disrespect would no longer be tolerated. Ja-eon, humiliated and bruised, could barely comprehend what had just happened. News spread quickly through the estate, with guards and servants murmuring about the shocking reversal. Aunts considered the weakest, Jin Yeon had dominated Ja-eon publicly. Even Hwa-eon acknowledged the transformation. Jin Yeon confirmed the change began during his time at the safe house, hinting that the man who returned was not the one who had left. While reviewing a list of employees headed to a conference, Jin Yeon noticed a troubling pattern. Every individual on the list had been recommended by the same person, Jianghu. The name alone confirmed Jin Yeon's suspicion. The manipulation within the clan had a clear source, and it all traced back to that man confronting his brother. Hwa-eon and Ja-eon. Jin Yeon asked directly if either of them was involved with the Ouyang clan. Both reacted with surprise and denial. insisting their loyalty to the family. Jin Yeon studied their responses carefully, and though suspicious, he found no immediate reason to doubt them. Their passionate refusals convinced. For now, satisfied, he decided to attend the upcoming conference, where high-ranking officials from the clan would gather. Before that, he turned his attention to his ultimate reason for returning. The bedridden clan leader, his father Jin Yeon, was allowed in. The ailing man welcomed him with a faint smile, acknowledging his presence. The elder admitted that stress had worn him down over time, and he quietly observed the son who had changed so much. Jin Yeon's demeanor, speech, and even his face felt unfamiliar. But despite the transformation, his father's voice softened with relief, glad simply to see his son return, stronger than ever. After leaving his father's room, Jin Yeon reflected on a feeling unfamiliar to family in his past life. He never experienced fatherhood, but through Lee Jin Yeon's memories, he understood that the clan leader was once a strong, dependable man. Now, lying frail in bed, that image had shrunk. Jin Yeon gently reassured him that he would eliminate the source of his stress, masking his intent behind a calm smile. The next day, the Yunha Merchant Group conference began. It was a formal gathering of powerful figures and decisions. Among them was Jianghu, the leader of the guard squad and a known martial master. His presence stirred whispers. Jin Yeon, dressed in ceremonial robes, arrived unannounced, drawing attention from the entire room. Many questioned his motives. While discussions unfolded, Jianghu slyly interjected, volunteering to recommend someone for Jin Yeon's guard squad. He masked his influence with courtesy, but others recognized the manipulation. Half the group had already been infiltrated by Yang's people. Still, Yang persisted, suggesting another candidate under the guise of helping. His ambition was clear: expand his reach deeper into the clan's structure. Jin Yeon, composed but alert, listened closely. The moment of confrontation between old power and new resolve was fast approaching. During the tense conference, Jianghu mocked the silence in the room after asserting his suggestion. His intimidation silenced most, but not Jin Yeon. Calmly and firm, Jin Yeon stood and voiced a bold proposal to dismiss Jianghu from his position as guard squad. The room reacted with shock and disbelief. Laughter broke out as supporters of Yang mocked the audacity of Jin Yeon's challenge. Yang himself found the request amusing, scoffing at Jin Yeon's authority, claiming that such decisions weren't his to make. Unshaken, Jin Yeon responded with action. In an instant, he unleashed a devastating surge of power, slamming Jianghu into the ground with a single lightning-charged blow. The room fell into stunned silence as dust settled, and the marble floor cracked under the force. Yang, disoriented and shaken, attempted to recover, but quickly realized the shift in power. Jin Yeon reminded him of his place, not with arrogance, but clarity. The Yunha Merchant Group, once overwhelmed by internal corruption, now had a new pillar of strength. With unwavering eyes, Jin Yeon declared his stand. The clan belonged to him now. No longer was he a passive heir. He had reclaimed authority, not by inheritance, but by undeniable strength and conviction. At the General Assembly, Lee Jin Yeon and his brother Hwa Yeon discussed the shifting power balance. Jin Yeon warned of underestimating martial artists, pointing to the declining Yunha Merchant Group as proof. As the Yuyang clan's numbers surged, Hwa Yeon realized the threat was real, though Jin Yeon assured him he would handle. Without, Jin Yeon attacked a man allied with a rival faction, creating chaos. The surrounding martial artists questioned his sanity as he confronted opponents from the Yuyang clan. Tensions escalated as swords were drawn, forcing Jin Yeon's guards to act. Despite the disorder, Jin Yeon maintained authority, criticizing the insubordination of those who turned their weapons against him. His expression was calm but decisive, signaling deeper intention. He hinted that disrupting the plans of the faction's captain might serve as retribution, specifically targeting those plotting in secret. In the shadows, a sinister scheme was revealed. The enemy had manipulated events, employing an assassin to strike Jin Yeon during recovery and orchestrating conflict between siblings. This internal strife weakened the family, leading to their father's collapse. Jin Yeon confronted Ouyang, the mastermind, who had hoped to control the merchant group by puppeteering from the shadow. But Jin Yeon had returned, this time not as a pawn, but as executioner. Jianghu laughed off Jin Yeon's accusations, mocking his ambitions, but Jin Yeon revealed that the assassin sent to kill him, Gongsun Myung, had died by his own hand. That, he claimed, was the moment the tides began to turn. His words unsettled, who, especially when Jin Yeon began recounting the failed plots, with unsettling clarity. Feigning sympathy, Jin Yeon reminded Ouyang of the damage caused to the Yunha Merchant Group, sarcastically offering to file claims for compensation. Provoked, Ouyang lashed out with violent energy, but Jin Yeon, unshaken, responded with a powerful lightning-infused counterattack, stunning everyone watching. The explosive clash revealed Jin Yeon's hidden martial prowess. Witnesses were shocked. He had not only learned martial arts, but also blocked a strike from the captain-level fighter. Jin Yeon used the moment to taunt them further, citing the legitimacy of a duel and mocking the attack on his still-recovering body. As the challenge escalated, Jianghu declared a formal duel. Jin Yeon accepted, but demanded it be a life-or-death match. The gathered crowd, including guards and Ouyang clan members, bore witness. Despite Jin Yeon's rapid growth in martial skill, Hu remained confident in his experience. As the duel began, Ouyang prepared to prove that raw power alone would not be enough to overcome years of hardened combat expertise. Jianghu launched a heavy blow, declaring Jin Yeon inexperienced. But Jin Yeon swiftly countered with lightning-infused precision. His response wasn't just physical, it was a statement. As Hugh tried to reassert dominance, Jin Yeon unleashed a devastating close-range strike, matching power with unshakable confidence. The battle intensified, and Jin Yeon activated his advanced technique, enlightened mobility art. The crowd watched in awe as he effortlessly weaved through Ouyang's defenses. Every movement was sharp, calculated, and overwhelming. Ouyang staggered, stunned by the strength before him. Jin Yeon reminded him that true experience wasn't just about age, it was about survival and mastery under pressure. With speed unmatched, he battered Ouyang from all angles. Even Ouyang began to question the situation. Something was off. Jin Yeon's technique, aura, and movements no longer felt like those of a novice. He wasn't fighting a mere youth, he was contending with the instinct of a martial master. Ouyanghu's desperation grew. His pride refused to let him lose to a brat. Summoning his three-form sword art, Hu launched a final attack. But Jin Yeon was already behind him, faster, sharper, decisive. With one last electrified punch, he delivered a crushing blow. The duel ended not with argument, but with raw force. Jin Yeon stood victorious, leaving the crowd stunned. As Jin Yeon's final blow landed, the skies above echoed with shock and awe. HWA Yeon and others stared upward, speechless, far away. The ailing merchant leader, Jin Yeon's father, glimpsed the energy from his window. Gripping his attendant's hand, he uttered a word filled with pride, "My son." Meanwhile, Jin Yeon stood calmly as Ouyanghu lay defeated. Even the guard captain, once dismissive, now acknowledged Jin Yeon's martial prowess. The Ouyang ranks were shaken. Hu's followers rushed to his side, but it was too late. Jin Yeon had decisively ended the duel. One Ouyang member tried to challenge him again, but Jin Yeon met it with fierce defiance. He made it clear he would take on any retaliation personally, not as a burden of the Yunhei merchant group. His declaration shook the crowd. HWA Yeon protested, but Jin Yeon reaffirmed, "The group is mine." He spoke not just for himself, but for his father, the guards who accepted him back, and the hands that served him with joy. Jin Yeon claimed ownership of the group, not through birthright, but through earned loyalty and strength. With calm authority, he looked down at the fallen enemy and declared that the Yunhei merchant group would never again be manipulated by scum like them. As Jin Yeon stood alone, the remaining guards realized the depth of his resolve. When asked for orders, he casually requested an elixir, citing his injury. HWA Yeon promised to prepare the best tonic, acknowledging Jin Yeon's new burden. Jin Yeon accepted the responsibility, stating he'd rebuild from the ground up. With the old guard gone, he revealed he already had replacements in mind. At a distant location, burly figures discussed the recent events. One man confirmed it. Li Jin Yeon was back. With strength, vision, and vengeance, he wasn't just reclaiming his place, he was preparing for something much greater. A few days prior to the General Assembly, Li Jin Yeon had just joined the Yunha merchant group. While walking the grounds with Vice Captain Han Yop, Jin Yeon noticed the man's dedication, working since dawn without rest. Observing the imbalance in work ethic among the staff, Jin Yeon began to reflect. Some toiled endlessly, while others lazed about. He silently concluded that those who exploited the group without contributing had no place there. Realizing that vacant positions would need to be filled, Jin Yeon turned his attention toward those he deemed suitable replacements. That night, he arrived at a bustling lavish tavern, where several former guards now indulged in drinks and gambling. They were unaware of his presence and mocked him, calling him a pushover and speculating about his motives. Calmly, but with clear intent, Jin Yeon entered the establishment. His presence silenced the room. Those who once ignored him now whispered behind his back, surprised by his return and curious about what he might do. As he made his way deeper inside, the tavern's guards took notice. Though many still underestimated him, Jin Yeon's eyes showed purpose. This visit wasn't casual. It was the beginning of a quiet purge and a search for loyalty. Li Jin Yeon arrived at the brothel's inner chamber, where the gatekeeper greeted him with mock. Once treated like a fool, he was now met with feigned polite, hinting at past financial exploitation. Jin Yeon, no longer tolerant of disrespect, warned the man not to touch him. When provoked further, he retaliated swiftly and entered the hall without hesitation. Inside, familiar faces greeted him: Chul Mingo, known as the Poisonous Fox, and others like Yuk Jinbo and Yuk Myungbo. They commented on his appearance and presumed recovery. The reunion was casual on the surface, but tension ran beneath their word. Chul Myunggo boasted friendship, claiming to defend Jin Yeon's honor, though the others knew little of the hardships he endured. In truth, their friendship had long been one-sided, filled with physical bullying and constant financial drain. Jin Yeon quietly observed, now seeing through their past as the conversation shifted. Chul Myunggo tried to revive their old dynamic, offering food and fake concern. Jin Yeon, calm but calculating, revealed his thoughts. He wasn't here to reconnect. He was deciding whether to eliminate Chul Mingo entirely. His true interest lay in the twin brothers, powerful yet wasted under Chul Mingo's leadership. In Jin Yeon's eyes, they were assets too valuable to rot in the shadow of a parasite. Li Jin Yeon finally made his decision. Calmly, he requested the vault key from Chul Myunggo, shocking everyone present. When met with confusion, Jin Yeon clarified, cash would suffice for now. He cited the thousands of niang he'd been forced to invest, stolen funds, medical expenses from beatings, and interest accumulated over the years. He estimated the total owed 100,000 niang. The demand triggered laughter. Chul Myung-go and his men mocked the seriousness of Jin Yeon's tone, finding humor in his calculated approach. They laughed louder when Jin Yeon mentioned the vault, claiming it contained far more gold, silver, jewels, but nothing meant for someone like him. Chul Myung-go dismissed the request as absurd and acted friendly, offering to lend money if Jin Yeon needed it. But suspicion crept into his tone. He questioned Jin Yeon's sudden boldness, suggesting he might have been scheming during his recovery. Frustrated, Chul Myung-go's temper flared. He shouted, asserting dominance, reminding everyone of his name and status. When Jin Yeon remained silent, Chul Myung-go ordered his men to subdue him. The room shifted instantly. One of the twins obeyed, gripping Jin Yeon's shoulder with force, awaiting orders. But Jin Yeon didn't resist. Instead, he stared ahead, calm, unreadable, and undoubtedly prepared for what would come next. As the enforcer grabbed him, Lee Jin Yeon struck without hesitation. With a swift movement, he broke free and launched the man across the room. The guards charged in response, but Jin Yeon dismantled them with precise martial arts. Each movement sharp, every strike deliberate. His attacks flowed with controlled aggression, throwing his enemies off balance before they could react. Lightning energy surged through his fist as he landed a punishing blow, sending another opponent crashing into the ground. Jin Yeon's calm demeanor never wavered. He hadn't expected much resistance, but the fight was unfolding differently. When the twin enforcers, once subdued, began standing again, his interest peaked. Despite shattered wrists and ankles, the twins rose, faces stoic and fearless. There was no hesitation in their movements, only a burning resolve. Jin Yeon realized then, these two weren't ordinary subordinates. They were hardened warriors. He smiled slightly. He had found what he was looking for. The twins launched themselves at him again, prompting Jin Yeon to vanish from sight, confused and disoriented. The brothers scanned the hall. He was gone, completely out of view. Their shock was evident. Lee Jin Yeon had proven his dominance and identified potential. Now, it was time to take the next step on his path. Jin Yeon swiftly subdued the twins, praising their strength but warning them to stay down. Turning calmly, he declared only one task remained, dealing with Chul Myung-go. The once boastful schemer, now nervous, masked his fear with a strained smile. Jin Yeon stepped forward, composed and resolute, ready to confront the man who had exploited him for years. During what was supposed to be a calm recovery period, Lee Jin Yeon shocked everyone by demonstrating martial prowess far beyond expectation. Chul Myung-go, caught off guard, demanded answer, confused by Jin Yeon's sudden display of strength. Despite his usual quick instincts, Chul Myung-go hesitated, stepping back in fear as Jin Yeon advanced calmly. No longer the weak man they remembered, driven by panic, Chul Myung-go launched the first attack, attempting to end the confrontation with a surprise strike. However, Jin Yeon, composed and precise, effortlessly countered the blow. With a devastating punch, he launched Chul Myung-go across the room, slamming him into the floor with overwhelming force. Electricity surged from Jin Yeon's fist as he delivered a punishing blow, leaving his opponent screaming in agony. The room fell silent as Jin Yeon stood victorious. His presence alone paralyzed the others. Chul Myung-go lay on the ground, broken, struggling to comprehend what had happened. Jin Yeon leaned forward, showing no anger, only dominance. Chul Myung-go, coughing and laughing weakly, realized the truth. This had been building up all along. Haunted by guilt and fear, he questioned if this brutal defeat was Jin Yeon's quiet revenge. Desperate, he pleaded for mercy, offering anything to escape the consequences of underestimating the wrong man. With his pride shattered, Chul Myung-go scrambled to salvage what he could. He claimed friendship, reminding Jin Yeon of their childhood bond, hoping to soften his stance. Jin Yeon listened, showing no emotion, until Chul Myung-go wrapped him in a sudden embrace, declaring them not just friends, but brothers. Seizing the moment, Chul Myung-go turned to the bystanders, two bald underlings, and forced them to acknowledge Jin Yeon as their big bro. They complied awkwardly, trying to stay on the stronger side of the conflict. But Jin Yeon remained unimpressed. He recalled Chul Myung-go's past behavior, groveling, begging, licking boots for survival. Now Chul Myung-go tried to rewrite history for convenience. Internally, Jin Yeon considered the future. If these men were useful, they could serve a purpose. He accepted their loyalty, but on his own terms, lifelong and binding. The group hesitated, but surrendered under pressure. Then Jin Yeon posed a challenge. If they were brothers, they must determine who the true elder was. He dismissed the others, preparing to settle the matter directly with Chul Myung-go. Confused and suspicious, Chul Myung-go questioned Jin Yeon's motive. But Jin Yeon wasn't after money, he was after order. From now on, he'd raise them properly, not as pawns, but as tools under his control. Crushed by humiliation and unable to regain control, Chul Myung-go broke down. He begged Jin Yeon to simply take the money and leave. The pain of losing both his pride and his underlings was too much. With a trembling voice, he offered everything he had, hoping it would end the ordeal. But Jin Yeon wasn't after possessions, he was after control and change. Frustrated, Chul Myung-go screamed to be killed, thinking it would be a mercy. Jin Yeon, without hesitation, struck him again with brutal precision. Each blow reminded Chul Myung-go that the balance of power had completely shifted. As electricity surged through his body again, panic overcame him. He truly feared for his life. Desperate, he finally surrendered the key, a symbol of whatever little authority he still held. Jin Yeon demanded it properly, reminding him that even mercy had a price. Only after Cholmingo begged with the right tone did Jin Yeon cease his assault. Beaten and bruised, Cholmingo collapsed in front of the other. His laughter, now deranged, startled even his follower. They recognized he had lost not just the fight, but his grip on power. Acknowledging defeat, Cholmingo reluctantly told his men to now serve Jin Yeon. Though ashamed, he knew deep down it was a better future than the one he'd carved out alone. Bruised and betrayed, Cholmingo lay in silence, bitterness rising in his chest. He cursed the twin brothers for abandoning and blamed his misfortune on everyone but himself. As night fell, his fragile ego was spotted by local thugs. Sensing his isolation, they mocked his weakened state, believing his former allies had deserted. A mob formed, seeking vengeance or perhaps just blood. Cholmingo, defiant but exhausted, tried to assert dominance, calling himself the poisonous fox. But it was no use. Surrounded and outnumbered, the group closed in. Just as a fatal blow loomed, Jin Yeon stepped in once again. Jin Yeon's arrival cut through the chaos. He shamed the crowd for attacking a weakened man and reminded them what real strength looked like. Silenced, they dispersed. Cholmingo, stunned, could only stare. Later, as the sun rose, the twin brothers thanked Jin Yeon for helping Cholmingo, revealing gratitude beyond duty. Jin Yeon, quietly watching them leave, reflected on their loyalty. Many had speculated the twins were slaves or followed Cholmingo out of fear, but the truth was different. They weren't bound by chains or terror. They stayed with Cholmingo out of choice, and now they chose to follow someone who gave them a future worth protecting. Even in his second life, Jin Yeon's strength stunned everyone. A distant figure recognized, shocked by Lee Jin Yeon's behavior. At the Yunha merchant group, Jae Yeon was growing increasingly frustrated. Ever since Lee Jin Yeon returned, nothing had been normal. From sudden wealth injections to the arrival of mysterious musclemen, the entire atmosphere had shifted. Jae Yeon, visibly agitated, spotted a scene unfolding and rushed to investigate. Two horses charged through the streets, pulling a heavily packed cart. The goods inside were precious elixirs, drawing attention from nearby workers. HWA Eon, overseeing the ship, confirmed that the delivery had been ordered directly by Jin Yeon. Jae Yeon was shocked to learn that this operation, which looked massive, was all coordinated under his brother's authority. Soon their father arrived outside for the first time in a long while. Drawn by the scale of the movement, though his health was fragile, he stood tall, motivated by what he believed. Jae Yeon questioned the bulk purchase, thinking it was for many, only to be told that every elixir was meant for Jin. Realizing the depth of the plan, their father revealed his intent to risk everything the family. He saw in Jin Yeon a path forward, and now, with full conviction, prepared to spend everything he'd earned to ensure it. Jae Yeon was furious. His outburst came the moment he realized his father had bought a mountain of elixirs solely for Jin Yeon. Feeling overlooked, he demanded his share, only to be met with dismissive disbelief. Humiliated, he stormed off, plagued by envy and frustration. Everywhere he went, Jin Yeon's name echoed, praised, celebrated, unmatched. Struggling with feelings of inadequacy, Jae Yeon wandered until a strange sound caught his attention. A masked warrior darted past him at blinding speed. Shocked and confused, he chased after the figure, but the figure simply claimed to be out for a walk, vanishing as mysteriously as he appeared. The encounter left Jae Yeon in stunned silence. Something shifted inside him. He realized that complaining wouldn't change any. Determined, he climbed to the rooftop and drew his sword. It was time to act, time to train, time to earn what he desired. As dusk settled, he faced off against a wooden training dummy. Channeling all his pent-up anger and ambition, he launched an explosive counterattack. Just as the dummy swung, his punch shattered its jaw cleanly. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, and for the first time, Jae Yeon took his own step forward. In a distant memory, Lee Jin Yeon bid his farewell, launching a devastating final attack. The image echoed in Jae Yeon's mind as he wrestled with frustration over his own lack of progress. Training at dusk, he muttered his confusion aloud, still trying to make sense of Jin Yeon's overwhelming presence. Unexpectedly, Jin Yeon appeared behind him, startling him once again. Jin Yeon, observing silent, offered to help, but only if Jae Yeon showed real effort. Taking up the sword, Jae Yeon demonstrated the technique he had been practicing. Jin Yeon acknowledged it, critiquing the flaws without sugarcoating. Embarrassed yet motivated, Jae Yeon pushed harder. Their training intensified. Jae Yeon mimicked the swordplay of a previous duel, even copying the sloppy thrust he'd seen before. Jin Yeon swiftly countered and corrected his form, prompting Jae Yeon to lash out in frustration. But his emotions left him open. Jin Yeon closed the gap with precision, overwhelming him with aggressive pressure. Jae Yeon, realizing he was outmatched, tried to backpedal and reason. Jin Yeon, however, continued pressing forward. Panicking, Jae Yeon attempted to escape, but when he finally looked back, Jin Yeon had vanished without a trace. Alone and breathless, Jae Yeon was left stunned by the gap between them. Jin Yeon's sparring continued relentlessly. As Jae Yeon tried to recover, Jin Yeon closed in with overwhelming precision. With a single blow, he drove his opponent to the edge. In the face of pressure, Jae Yeon instinctively launched a final desperate strike, his best hidden move, but even that was easily seen through. Exhausted and gasping, Jae Yeon lay defeated. Jin Yeon calmly critiqued the flaws, explaining the risk behind the technique. He pointed out the drawbacks of stabbing and the intricacies of Wuyang's sword art. Though the feedback was sharp, it came from a place of mastery. Jin Yeon reflected on his current state. In the past, As the Fist King, he could have ended the battle before a blade was even drawn. Now, even at a fraction of his former strength, he recognized that beating someone like Jianghu should never have been the limit. There were still enemies, terrifying ones, he hadn't overcome in his previous life. Determined, Jin Yeon steeled his resolve. Mere satisfaction was not enough. He needed to become stronger, far stronger than before. As a servant arrived announcing a guest, Jin Yeon's focus remained unwavering. The path ahead would not be easy, but he wouldn't stop until he surpassed his past. In the quiet courtyard of the martial arts sect, the day began with chaos. Jin Yeon, a frustrated disciple, screamed in agony after being overlooked once again. His father and elders walked away, seemingly ignoring his plea for attention and acknowledgement. As he chased after them, desperately asking about his position and significance, he was met with cold dismissal, mocked, and overshadowed by Jin Yeon. Jin Yeon's resentment deepened. He felt as though the entire sect discriminated against him, treating him as a worthless outcast. His mind boiled with anger and confusion as he recalled Jin Yeon's rise and questioned the miracle behind it. Suddenly, a strange, ominous sound caught his attention. A figure, cloaked in energy, emerged behind him with speed and intensity. Jin Yeon turned just in time to see the masked assailant strike. In a flash, he was thrown to the ground, unable to comprehend the situation. As the attacker casually announced he was merely out for a walk, Jin Yeon stood in disbelief, watching the figure dash away. Perplexed and annoyed, Jin Yeon gritted his teeth. For the first time, something sparked within him. Picking up his sword, he prepared himself. Perhaps it was finally time to prove he belonged. Jin Yeon appeared at the door. The room fell silent. Fear gripped them. They begged someone to help. The infamous group, known as the Four Heavenly Kings of Wine and Women, Simaguk, Jujere, Juong, and Jin Yeon, had long enjoyed a reputation for indulgence and idle luxury. Though lacking honor, they held influence due to lineage and wealth. One day, the three former members, minus Jin Yeon, gathered upon hearing rumors of Jin Yeon's sudden return. As they sat around the table, they were met with an unexpected version of their old friend. Jin Yeon, now exuding a calm and fierce presence, recalled the group's past as one of vanity and vice. His former companions had always been driven by shallow pursuits. Jin Yeon, however, had clearly changed. When questioned about his transformation, Jin Yeon simply downplayed it. But his aura spoke otherwise. His strength was no longer superficial. His composure unsettled the others, who suspected he had undergone intense training, far beyond what normal effort could yield. One of them recognized traces of real martial arts in him. They referenced a recent rumor that he had defeated a powerful figure, Ouyang Hai. Jin Yeon admitted nothing but claimed it was luck. Yet, inwardly, he declared the old Jin Yeon dead. His goal now was singular: repay debts and grow stronger, no matter the cost. As the evening unfolded, Jin Yeon's former companions sat awkwardly, unsettled by the transformation they saw. The once carefree fool now carried himself with calm detachment. They joked nervously, unsure if they were even welcome. One questioned if they'd entered the wrong place altogether. Soon, the truth emerged. Jin Yeon was preparing to leave. To his companions, it felt like exile, an indirect punishment for his reckless past. But to Jin Yeon, it was an opportunity. He viewed this forced distance as a chance to recover, grow, and transform. One of them encouraged him to use this time wisely, to study and change. Jin Yeon's expression soft. Change, perhaps it was truly possible. They toasted him in recognition. One by one, they admitted he had genuinely changed, something worth celebrating. Despite their teasing and complaints, a quiet warmth passed among the group. These weren't just drinking buddies, they were real friends. Jin Yeon, smiling, finally spoke his thoughts aloud. He had changed, but had they? Faced with the question, the group laughed awkwardly. They knew deep down that they hadn't. The moment grew still. Looking into his drink, one muttered, maybe they had all been like frogs in a well, unaware of how much larger the world really was. As the group sat around the table, laughter masked a deeper realization. One among them, Jin Yeon, had already climbed out of the metaphorical well. While they remained stuck in shallow pursuits, he had seen the world beyond, transformed by hardship and strength. The night came to a close under the moonlit sky. Jin Yeon prepared to depart, and his companions offered final words, encouragement, teasing, and reluctant admiration. They wished him well, urging him to keep training and stay safe. In turn, Jin Yeon smiled and waved goodbye. As the group dispersed, a somber note lingered. One of them reflected that their carefree youth had ended. Jin Yeon, once the most reckless, had returned as the most mature. The rest wandered the street, joking to hide the weight of change. Yet their bond remained, and their paths were not yet fully diverged. Elsewhere, the revelation of Jianghu's death sent shockwave through the little deity sect. Sect leader Jisang, furious and stunned, demanded answers. The confirmation was clear. Jianghu had been crushed in under 30 exchanges. The man responsible, Jin Yeon. His strength now drew the attention of powerful enemies. A storm brewed quietly in the distance, and Jin Yeon stood at its center, unyielding. Within the little deity sect, Jisang and his officers debated the shocking defeat of Jianghu. They acknowledged Jin Yeon's overwhelming strength, defeating a swordsman with only his fists. Though the duel had been fair, the sting of humiliation was sharp. Revenge was considered, but officially dismissed. Open retaliation would tarnish their name. However, the facade of honor quickly crumbled. One officer, enraged, lashed out violently at a subordinate for merely speaking of friendship with the fallen. His fury masked the deeper fear of Jin Yeon's rising power. The act of cruelty sent a clear message. Compassion had no place in the sect's current climate. Despite their public restraint, the sect's true motive surfaced. Their leadership saw the Yuna merchant group's defiance as an insult, both in taxes and reputation. Though they claimed not to be gangsters, it was clear they were looking for justification. Elsewhere, Jin Yeon's old friends gathered, reflecting on their own stagnation compared to his growth. They still lingered in indulgence, unsure if they could ever change. But Jin Yeon's actions had stirred some. Perhaps one drink less and one step forward was enough. For now, meanwhile, in the shadows, a sinister truth brewed. They didn't just want justice. They wanted the Yunha Group's wealth. Rumors about the Yunha merchant group's vast wealth began circulating in dark corners of the city. Some speculated that its young heir, Jin Yeon, was worth more than gold, making him a target. But Jin Yeon had no interest in wealth or politics. He was focused. That night, one of his companions, panting and flushed, rushed back to him. Jin Yeon met him with mock amusement, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. His friend relayed a disturbing encounter with suspicious men, likely operatives from the little deity sect. Realizing the threat was immediate, Jin Yeon made a snap decision: infiltrate their base before dawn. Disregarding the risks, Jin Yeon led his hesitant ally to the guard warehouse. There, he handed him a disguise. Despite protest, Jin Yeon insisted they would move first strike before the enemy prepared. He tasked the nervous companion, a Murim hopeful, to guide him to the sect's base. Under the cloak of night, they arrived at the outskirts. Cherry blossoms drifted silently across rooftop, a stark contrast to the heavy tension below. Yellow-robed guards patrolled the premises, hidden in the shadows. Jin Yeon confirmed their location. This was it. The enemy was unaware, but Jin Yeon had no intention of waiting. He was ready to act. Jin Yeon dismissed his companion after reaching the enemy base. With guards swarming inside, his ally questioned how they'd infiltrate. Calmly, Jin Yeon prepared to move alone. Without hesitation, he launched into action, disabling a sentry mid-air. As cherry blossoms fell, his eyes sharpened with resolve. He chose to act just like he had in his past life, swift and ruthless. Dan Wusang had lived his life steeped in conflict. From a young age as an orphan with no one to rely on, he never shied away from a fight. His journey through the harsh world of the Jianghu only strengthened that resolve. Every battle carved his reputation, until he eventually earned the fearsome title of the Fist, a throne he secured through sheer strength alone. Now, reborn as Jin Yeon, he retained the same fire charging through the gates of an unfamiliar sect. He struck down the guards without hesitation. Shock spread among the disciples as the masked intruder stormed in. Wherever he went, chaos followed. Fighting wasn't just a necessity, it was his nature. Without wasting time, Jin Yeon demanded to meet their leader. The sect members hesitated, mocking his sudden appearance. But Yum Jisong's arrogance vanished when he incapacitated one of them in a single strike. Reinforcements gathered, but fear was already spreading. Amid the confusion, a sect elder, Yum Jisong, finally appeared. Curious about the man who dared such boldness, he asked Jin Yeon's identity. Jin Yeon answered plainly, he was an assassin. Yet behind the mask, Yum noticed something strange. Those hands. Rumors of a merchant heir who fought with fists resurfaced. Yum Jisong's expression twisted into a smile as he gave the order to seize the masked intruder. Jin Yeon stood unfazed as guards rushed in from all directions. The situation reminded him of the past, a time when he had once fought countless enemies at once in the pouring rain. That memory reignited his instincts. Without hesitation, Jin Yeon launched into action. His movements were explosive, overwhelming the crowd in moments. Bodies flew as his fists tore through the formation with brutal precision. Despite lacking a weapon, his body alone wreaked havoc. Each strike was calculated, efficient, and merciless. The sect members looked on in disbelief. None could comprehend how one man could dominate them so complete. Whispers of monster began to spread among the survivors. Suddenly, a blade grazed past Jin Yeon's cheek. Standing before him, Yum Jisong finally drew his sword. With a smirk, he mocked Jin Yeon's lack of weapon, calling it a waste to use his own expensive blade. But he conceded, just this once, he'd make an exception. As Jin Yeon fended off the encroaching disciple, the situation turned dire. Pinned down by numbers, he faced Jisong's full intent to kill. The final strike loomed, its aim Jin Yeon's head. As Jin Yeon prepared to counter Yum Jisong's attack, a volley of steel spikes was unleashed from above. The order to fire echoed through the sect, and dozens of hidden projectiles rained down like a storm. Jin Yeon quickly assessed the trap. They weren't just trying to fight him, they were trying to execute him on the spot. Dodging was impossible, but escape wasn't his plan. A familiar voice called out to him mid-chaos, tossing him a dagger. Without hesitation, Jin Yeon caught the weapon and spun into motion. With precise movement, he deflected every spike mid-air, redirecting the deadly barrage away. The feat left even Jisong stunned. He had never seen someone turn such odds in their favor. With just a single blade, then, with no pause, Jin Yeon hurled the dagger like a bolt of light. It landed with force, slicing past Jisong's guard and striking. Blood spilled, But Jin Yeon didn't stop. Eyes locked, he declared his intent, not through weaponry, but through fists. Drawing his blade now, Jisang snarled in frustration, acknowledging the masked fighter's overwhelming force. Jin Yeon advanced, unfazed by the army before him. As more men charged, he tore through them. His movements were brutal and fast, one man overwhelming an entire sect. A final thunderous strike exploded across the sect, scattering debris and body. Amid the smoke, Jin Yeon emerged, unscathed, and now holding the young woman hostage early. Her eyes widened in disbelief as he calmly set her aside, telling her to move back. All eyes shifted to Young Jizang could only stare, stunned by the sheer dominance. Jin Yeon's fighting didn't match his age. Though young in appearance, his movements were refined like a martial veteran. As he approached, Jisang's fear replaced his pride. He stammered, offering riches in exchange for his life. But Jin Yeon didn't hesitate. He smashed him into the ground with a fistful of scorn. Coins spilled as Jisang pleaded. Jin Yeon scoffed at the offer, calling it disgusting. With one final strike, he ended the fight, his disdain visible around him. Silence fell, broken only by murmurs of awe and disbelief from those too afraid to interfere. Under the morning sun, Jin Yeon walked calmly through the court, accompanied by 2 guards and a woman in traditional attire. As they approached a fork, one guard volunteered to escort the woman, recognizing her destination matched his route. Jin Yeon gave a subtle nod and continued on his path alone. As they walked, the woman identified the escort as Sima Guk. Surprised, he asked how she knew. She explained she had seen him frequently at the Sweet Scent House and knew he was close to Jin Yeon. Grateful for his help, she offered to treat him next time. Guk politely declined, stating he no longer intended to visit broth. The woman observed that Jin Yeon had changed significantly. Jin Yeon quietly agreed and reflected that he too must evolve, especially if his friend was changing. With determination in his heart, he smiled as cherry blossoms fell gently around them, and he decided it was time for breakfast. At the merchant group's hall, a lavish meal awaited the men. Jin Yeon encouraged them to eat freely. When asked about eating 7 times a day, he casually approved. Yet beneath his calm exterior, he contemplated his recent wound and the ambush he faced. Realizing his strength was still lacking, true power would require more than training alone. While finishing his meal, Jin Yeon was interrupted by a knock. A servant announced the arrival of a delivery. Curious, Jin Yeon received a package wrapped with care, though he hadn't been expecting anything. Inside was a letter from his old friend, Ji Yoo-ung. The message explained that after they parted, Ji Yoo-ung visited a tavern but only had one drink, a personal milestone. He confessed the original purpose of his visit was to deliver something requested by Jin Yeon's father, but left without completing the task. Accompanying the letter was a rare gift, century-old tuber fleece flowers, aged nearly 500 years. Jin Yeon recognized their value immediately, estimating that the herbs might enhance his lightning phase to the 5th level. Touched by his friend's effort, he acknowledged the deep trust between. Another letter from the Tahio merchant group, one of the wealthiest in the Central Plains, accompanied a second box. It was a reward for long-standing friendship and trust. Opening the box, Jin Yeon was stunned to find azurite essence, an extremely rare elixir. Even in his past life, he had only ever consumed a few drops. Realizing its value, he instructed his guards to protect the area while he began cultivating its power. Following the gift of azurite essence, Jin Yeon was informed that the merchant group leader had prepared a full stash of similar rare items just for him. As he looked upon the sparkling collection, he sat in silent disbelief. It was a clear reminder of how deeply influence and wealth could shape one's path. With a faint smile, he admitted, money truly was powerful. 2 hours later, Jin Yeon entered deep meditation, channeling the elixir's energy. Azure currents surged around him. Though the taste of the essence was bitter and carried no fragrance, it mirrored the essence of martial arts, painful, flavorless, but rewarding. As the energy surged, his body reacted violently. The heat intensified, and he acknowledged that without training this new body, the overwhelming force would have destroyed him. Resisting the pain only fueled it. Realizing this, Jin Yeon forced himself to suppress the chaos through sheer will, unleashing a surge of energy that resonated through the room. After a long internal battle, he finally contained the energy and stabilized his core. With a final breath, he crushed the remnants of his former self, both symbolically and spiritually, marking his advancement to the 5th phase. The old Jin Yeon was gone. A stronger one had emerged. Although Jin Yeon had advanced to the 5th phase, he recognized the true dangers still ahead. Absorbing more azurite essence now was like pouring molten fire into a fragile vessel, a clay cup made of wet sand. His body, though strengthened, remained an unstable container for such immense energy. He likened it to placing that cup into a raging furnace, something bound to shatter. But Jin Yeon wasn't deterred. Gritting his teeth, he resolved to endure. As he braced himself, he found his consciousness surrounded by a swirling red storm, the spirit energy of the azurite essence itself, now testing his will and greed. Though he briefly questioned whether he had asked for too much, he reaffirmed his belief that overcoming this would grant him even greater strength. 7 days passed. Outside, the administrators noticed Jin Yeon had yet to emerge. Wary of the intense energy and instructed not to interfere, they waited cautiously. Suddenly, an explosive burst of power erupted from the building, stunning everyone nearby. Amidst the smoke and energy, Jin Yeon emerged. radiating an overwhelming aura. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light. The room behind him was torn apart. Those watching could only ask in disbelief, was this truly still Jin Yeon? Jin Yeon staggered forward, trembling and drenched in sweat. His eyes were blank, aura unstable. The onlookers panicked. Fearing energy deviation, they rushed to his aid, calling his name in desperation. Jin Yeon stood surrounded by his worried subordinates, disoriented and sweating. Something within him had changed. Ignoring their concern, he rose abruptly, excusing himself under the pretense of needing air. Despite the night's cool breeze, his body was overheating. He moved quickly through the building, barely acknowledging the others nearby. Unseen to them, he was battling a rising heat, surging from deep inside. As Jin Yeon stepped outside, the sensation worsened. His body burned unnaturally despite the clear skies. Without hesitation, he leapt across rooftops, trying to create distance between himself and the estate. He knew the internal energy was becoming unstable. His movements became erratic as he fought to contain a force his current body could not yet handle. Reaching the edge of the forest, Jin Yeon pushed further into isolation. He finally landed in a secluded mountain basin. The pressure within him had reached its peak. His skin sparked with raw energy, his body pulsating uncontrollably. Gritting his teeth, Jin Yeon realized suppression was no longer an option. If he couldn't tame the power surging through him, he had to release it before it destroyed everything around. Clenching his fist, he prepared to let it all go. Jin Yeon screamed as lightning erupted violently from his body, tearing through the ground and sky. The energy he had tried to contain exploded outward, shaking the earth. In the distance, bystanders witnessed the spectacle, awestruck at the sight of lightning rising from the earth. When the energy storm passed, Jin Yeon stood alone in the rain, exhausted yet alive. He clenched his fist, feeling the residual current still flowing inside. Realizing the extent of what he had released, he reassessed his progress. If he could survive that discharge, he was now capable of advancing to the 8th phase of the Lightning 10 phase art. Soon after, he returned to the city amidst the rain, his torn clothes drawing the attention of confused onlookers. Determined to regain composure, he made his way to a clothing shop. There, the shopkeeper recognized him and offered clothes for free, expressing gratitude for Jin Yeon's past actions that had brought peace to the street. Touched by the gesture, Jin Yeon accepted the clothes and a child's gift of an umbrella. With a quiet nod, he stepped back into the rain, restored, composed, and stronger than before, prepared for whatever awaited him next. As rain continued to fall across the quiet streets, Jin Yeon walked with a calm expression beneath his umbrella. For the first time, he noticed the peaceful air surrounding the marketplace, something he had never cared about before. The once chaotic district now bustled gently with families and merchants, a result of the fear he had instilled in the local thug. He reflected on the difference his actions had made. Just months ago, violence ruled these roads. Now, people greeted him with smiles and gratitude. Children played freely. Even Jin Yeon, often detached and cold, found himself slightly comforted by this unfamiliar warmth. It was a feeling he didn't expect to enjoy. Suddenly, the calm was broken by the sound of shouting and a chase. A criminal dashed through the streets, pursued by guards. Jin Yeon recognized the fleeing man, Chol Min-go, an old acquaintance. Their meeting was brief but familiar, and amidst the chaos, Jin Yeon couldn't help but acknowledge Chol Min-go's unchanged recklessness. Elsewhere, at the Emperor's assembly, the powerful clans convened. Word spread that Jianghu, a senior martial expert, had died at the hands of someone from the merchant group. Laughter erupted among leaders as they mocked Ouyang's failure, unaware of the power growing behind the man who caused it. The Emperor's assembly mocked Ouyanghu's defeat. Meanwhile, a sinister elder plotted vengeance, aiming to crush the merchant who humiliated them. Jin Yeon and Chol Min-go found themselves surrounded by thugs from the Crimson Reaper Alliance, a group notorious for their grip over the downtown district. The gang's leader stepped forward, demanding they hand over Chol Min-go. Jin Yeon remained calm, while Chol Min-go quietly explained the gang's reputation and recent attempts at expanding control. He revealed they had even stolen financial records from his auction business. Despite the hostile situation, Jin Yeon kept his composure and warned the intruders to leave. The gang laughed at his threat, unaware of who they were dealing with. But as they stepped forward, an intense pressure filled the air. Even without moving, Jin Yeon's presence unsettled them. One of the gang members attempted to provoke him, only to be swiftly and brutally knocked out by a single strike. The rest of the gang froze Jin Yeon unshaken, made it clear he wasn't interested in a fight, but he would not hold back if forced. He gave them one last warning. Recognizing the danger, the group finally backed off. As they walked away, Chol Min-go, still recovering, joked about getting food. Jin Yeon agreed. Their confrontation ended not with a battle, but with noodles, because even in war, hunger remains undefeated. After the street conflict, Jin Yeon and Chol Min-go settled into a warm meal at a local restaurant. Chol Min-go, revived by the food, remarked on how alive he finally felt. Once known for barely touching his meals, he now devoured bowl after bowl, joking about his changed appetite. The two ordered even more food, as their conversation turned personal. Chol Min-go asked about Jin Yeon's adopted children, the twins, and learned they were training well. He commented on their massive appetites, joking that they weren't human. Jin Yeon, unbothered, casually reminded Chol Min-go that he could afford it. The mood lightened further, and the conversation shifted toward martial arts. Curious, Chol Min-go asked how one could properly learn to fight. He confessed he wanted to take on the Crimson Reaper, the leader of the thugs from early. Jin Yeon was quiet at first, but eventually offered to teach him, only if Chul Mingo fully committed. Chul Mingo readily agreed, but was surprised when Jin Yeon demanded a bow as a sign of respect. Embarrassed, Chul Mingo resisted, but Jin Yeon remained serious. In a moment of comic desperation, Chul Myongo threatened to defile the merchant group's gates if he wasn't taught. Jin Yeon said nothing, his piercing stare enough to restore order without a word. Jin Yeon initiated Chul Mingo's training by delivering a swift umbrella strike across the table. Demonstrating with precision, he instructed Chul Mingo to mimic the exact motion. Chul Mingo, expecting more complex techniques, was visibly underwhelmed. Frustrated, he reacted with dramatic threats, but Jin Yeon remained unfazed. He handed Chul Myongo the umbrella and ordered him to replicate the swing, not once, but 100,000 times. As Chul Mingo struggled to take the task seriously, Jin Yeon reminded him that martial arts require discipline. If Chul Mingo wasn't ready for that commitment, he should give up now. Chul Mingo, startled by the seriousness, asked for confirmation. Jin Yeon responded by pressing further, questioning whether a mere handful of moves could make someone capable of killing. Recalling how Chul Myongo had fled from battle early, Jin Yeon challenged him harshly. He explained that true power comes from relentless repetition and ready, not hopeful shortcuts. Chul Mingo's excuses didn't impress him. Jin Yeon then issued a final challenge: either live with purpose or don't live at all. Chul Mingo admitted he didn't want to die, but Jin Yeon wasn't moved. He demanded Chul Mingo reflect on who he really was, rat or fox. With that, the real lesson began: humility, purpose, and silence before word. After a firm conversation, Chul Mingo stepped out into the rain determined. He requested the umbrella, signaling his decision to begin training seriously. Jin Yeon stayed behind, quietly paying for the meal and watching his companion leave. He reflected on Chul Myongo's earlier question about defeating the Crimson Reaper, knowing the path ahead would be grueling. Elsewhere, the Crimson Reaper alliance gathered. Their leader, cloaked in menace, recalled Jin Yeon's promise to find them. Furious over recent events, he demanded answers from his subordinate. One had allowed Chul Myongo to escape, and blood stained the floor as punishment followed. Now, with both sides preparing, a storm was formed, one rooted in vengeance, discipline, and the unrelenting pursuit of strength. The confrontation was only beginning. The Crimson Reaper's name echoed across the Yukon region like a warning bell. Inside a blood-soaked chamber, corpses lay lifeless as a man delivered grim news. One of the merchant group's sons had defied their attack and overpowered them. The leader's rage simmered as he learned that the boy, already gaining notoriety, fought with frightening martial skill. With growing influence in Yukon, the Crimson Reaper now commanded fear and obedience from all who operated within its borders. Orders were clear. Both threats were to be eliminated. The Reaper's temperament was brutal. Legend said he tore enemies apart with his bare hand. His hands were stained with the blood of powerful sect leaders, and his dominance continued as he absorbed faction after faction. Tribute flowed to him from every business, legal or illicit. Lee Jin Yeon, the black-haired martial artist, observed this spreading shadow. Though still unnoticed, he understood the danger. To avoid exposing his identity and involving the merchant group, he resolved to act first. At Passion House, tension thickened. A guest had entered the Crimson Reaper's chamber, and panic spread among the attendants. As Jianghu moved to intervene, she encountered Lee Jin Yeon, who calmly asked a single question: was the Crimson Reaper inside? Lee Jin Yeon arrived at the Passion House with a singular purpose: confront the Crimson Reaper. After confirming the Reaper's presence, he ordered Jianghu to evacuate the others. Despite warnings of the Reaper's volatile temper, Jin Yeon remained undeterred and ascended the stairs. At the upper levels, guards intercepted him, demanding his identity. He ignored them, prompting a violent response. One guard lashed out, but Jin Yeon swiftly countered, knocking them aside with overwhelming force. The commotion attracted more enforcers, their confidence wavering as they witnessed his strength. Panic spread when Jin Yeon effortlessly dispatched the attackers. Onlookers screamed and retreated as the hall filled with violence. Jin Yeon's focus never wavered. He only wanted to know one thing: where was the Crimson Reaper? Facing a growing group of reinforcements, Jin Yeon was surrounded. They shouted to kill him, believing sheer numbers would be enough, but Jin Yeon stood. He decided to eliminate every obstacle in his path. As energy crackled around him, he unleashed devastating martial power, pushing forward with decisive strikes. He neutralized an attacker, seizing the man's weapon mid-charge. His eyes burned with determination. He would reach the Crimson Reaper, regardless of how many stood in his way. Lee Jin Yeon charged through the defenders with relentless force, each movement precise and devastating. Sparks of energy surged through his strikes as he dismantled enemy after enemy. A guard hurled a spiked mace, but Jin Yeon dodged effortlessly, disarmed the man, and claimed his weapon in a swift motion. The resistance grew desperate. Cries of madman filled the air as fear overtook fury. Jin Yeon continued forward, bashing opponents with borrowed weapons, clearing a path with explosive momentum. He paused only briefly after crashing into a room, realizing it was the wrong one. Disregarding the wreckage, he moved on, prepared to tear through every floor if necessary. Room after room fell under his ramp. Dust and debris clouded the corridors as terrified fighters scattered or fell. Finally, after storming through yet another level, Jin Yeon stopped. The Crimson Reaper wasn't there. He had to be on the next floor. Meanwhile, the Reaper, seated calmly, sensed the disturbance growing closer. An injured subordinate rushed in, confirming the attacker's identity. Jin Yeon stepped into the room with unwavering confidence, locking eyes with his target. The Reaper rose with a smirk, intrigued. Jin Yeon, now face to face with his foe, confirmed it. Fifth floor, at last reaching the top floor. Jin Yeon stood among fallen guards and scattered bodies, unimpressed by the grandeur. The height was unnecessary, just like the resistance. The Crimson Reaper greeted him with a mocking tone, unfazed by the chaos below. Their confrontation began with subtle taunts. Jin Yeon spoke coldly, stating that stomping over others was his specialty. The Reaper smirked, boasting his dominance and recalling how easily he crushed those beneath him. His twisted pride showed as he reminisced about the underworld, enjoying the feeling of overpowering lowlifes. Jin Yeon watched silently, the madness in the man becoming clearer. The tension escalated when the Reaper casually dismissed a woman in the room, prompting Jin Yeon to demand her removal for her safety. But the Reaper's murderous intent surfaced. He wanted to kill Jin Yeon and savor it. His eyes darkened, voice heavy with bloodlust. Outside, panic swept through the district. Citizens and criminals alike fled the building as word spread of a violent intruder tearing it apart. Amidst the chaos, another fighter emerged, a masked warrior who began cutting down enemies with precision. He was counting over 2,000 strikes already, vowing to crush his enemies one by one. Another storm was forming from the shadows. The masked warrior halted mid-swing, startled by a massive explosion above. His eyes widened. He recognized that power. The Crimson Reaper launched himself toward Jin Yeon with violent force, but Jin Yeon met the assault with cold precision. A single strike from Jin Yeon shattered the Reaper's guard, sending the scarred warrior flying into the ground with explosive impact. Dust and debris scattered as the Reaper crashed through stone, barely able to stabilize himself. Yet instead of fear, a twisted grin spread across his face. He was enjoying this. He rose again, battered but eager, acknowledging his opponent's strength. Onlookers circled the arena, the air tense with anticipation. The two warriors faced off. Without hesitation, the Reaper surged forward, fists pounding the ground with each step. Jin Yeon evaded swiftly, but the Reaper continued to press the attack with spiked weapons and brute force. Their power clashed again and again. Jin Yeon's movements were sharp and calculated, while the Reaper relied on raw aggression. As the fight escalated, the Reaper grew frustrated. How could a mere merchant's son possess such strength? Determined to end it, he poured his full force into a final blow, but Jin Yeon, calm and unshaken, met him head-on. With flawless timing and strength, he countered and reminded the Crimson Reaper exactly who his opponent truly was. The tide of the battle shifted decisively. Jin Yeon, revealed to be the legendary Fist King, launched a devastating punch that caught the Crimson Reaper off guard. The sheer force shattered his stance and sent him reeling. Though the Reaper had mocked him earlier, the weight of Jin Yeon's title now bore down on. Bruised but defiant, the Crimson Reaper shed restraint, unleashing his full power. Muscles swelled and veins bulged as he roared, charging at Jin Yeon with everything he had. Blow after blow was exchanged, but Jin Yeon's movements remained composed and dominant. A single rotating strike sent the Crimson Reaper crashing again into the arena floor. Despite his furious effort, the Reaper began to realize he was outmatched. Even at full strength, he couldn't break through. Jin Yeon, calm and relentless, stood over him. The humiliation stung deeper than any punch. Jin Yeon spoke with finality. If the Reaper had shown a shred of humanity, this fury wouldn't exist. As he grabbed his opponent, electric blue energy surged through him. The second phase of his technique began, then the third, fourth, and fifth, each stage amplifying his terrifying power. Spectators trembled, the air cracked with force, and then came the question everyone feared to ask: what is that? With his opponent broken beneath him, Jin Yeon activated the peak of his technique, the White Lightning 10-phase art. His body surged with electric energy as he unleashed its climax. Lightning roar. The sky lit up in a blinding flash, and the resulting shockwave tore through the arena. The ground split, buildings trembled, and stunned spectators could only stare in awe as lightning exploded outward, engulfing everything. As dust settled, all eyes turned to the enormous crater. Left behind, murmurs turned into gasps. This was no longer just a duel. It was a reckoning. The Crimson Reaper had been decisively crushed. Jin Yeon addressed the surviving thugs who'd supported the Reaper. He questioned their right to exploit the weak, demanding answers as fear gripped the remaining men. His words pierced deeper than his fists. Justice was being enforced not just with strength, but with purpose. Panic. The underlings rallied together to strike back, shouting bravado. But Jin Yeon stood unfazed, prepared to dismantle them just as easily. Among the crowd, whispers spread. Was tribute now a thing of the past? Could this man be trusted with power? As Jin Yeon advanced, one masked observer watched silent, impressed. He fights incredibly well. Jin Yeon's words ignited something deep within the masked man. Once a coward, now determined, he stood tall. Strength, he realized, wasn't given, it was claimed. As Jin Yeon warned him to know his place, the man roared back with resolve. No longer a rat, he declared himself the poisonous fox, ready to fight. At the Yunha Merchant Group estate, Lee H.W. Yeon questioned his older brother Jin Yeon, who returned with blood on his clothes. Jin Yeon dismissed the concern. It wasn't his blood. The attackers targeting their group had been handled efficiently. As the brothers conversed, H.W.A. Yeon raised a deeper issue: how to repay the Taeho Merchant Group, whose Allurite essence had been crucial to their survival. Recognizing the essence's immeasurable value, Jin Yeon concluded that material repayment was impossible. Instead, he proposed forming a merchants' alliance, a union of merchant families offering shared protection and support. Though H.W.A. Yeon was initially surprised, Jin Yeon explained that the goal was simple: repay the Taeho Group, not with money, but with solidarity. Their plan was clear: start small, offer security, and accept no fee. They would defend the lives of merchants and establish a network for fast communication. The alliance would shield members from extortion and external threat. But concern rose. What if enemies beyond the Taiho group's reach emerged? Jin Yeon responded without hesitation. If the underworld of Jianghu stepped in, he would go himself. The power granted by the medicine was real. It had made him stronger. That strength would now serve not just vengeance, but unity. With the idea of the Merchants Alliance accepted, Jin Yeon and HWA Eon sealed the decision. HWA Eon proposed the name Greet Merchant, which Jin Yeon quickly approved, dismissing flashier alternatives. They moved forward with preparation. HWA Eon noted how his workload had grown since Jin Yeon's return, but reassured him it was a good sign. Busy merchants meant thriving business. Suddenly, a messenger burst into the room, breathless and panicked. He announced that Lord Wuyang himself had arrived at their main hall, accompanied by his disciples. The news stunned everyone. Jin Yeon and HWA Eon exchanged serious glances, knowing this visit wouldn't be peaceful. Meanwhile, in the main hall, Wuyang Sang, patriarch of the Wuyang clan, stood with a cold presence. Still enraged by past humiliation at a ruler's meeting, he ordered each of his followers to challenge Jin Yeon. One victory wouldn't be enough. He demanded total dominance to restore their pride. His instructions were cruel. Jin Yeon must not die easily. His disciples, Shin Sobai, Wuyang, Myang, and Wuyang Woon, accepted the task with grim readiness. Each had their own fighting style, some barehanded, others wielding weapons. Though cautious of Jin Yeon's strength, they prepared to face him one by one. With vengeance as their only goal, the Ouyang disciples waited impatiently outside, one of them dismissing Jin Yeon's past opponent as unskilled. Their conversation was cut short when massive servants appeared to escort them. They were led to the annex, where Jin Yeon calmly awaited them, prepared and composed. He greeted them formally, noting their long journey. Each challenger introduced himself: Wuyang Myang, Wuyang Woon, and Shin Sobai. Moments later, Wuyang Song himself appeared, offering a courteous yet clear explanation. He had come to witness Jin Yeon's strength firsthand. He requested a duel between Jin Yeon and his disciples, hoping they would learn from the experience. Jin Yeon agreed, and the rules were stated simply: leave the ring, lose consciousness, or become unable to move. That would count as defeat. With that, the duel began. Jin Yeon's demeanor remained composed, while his opponent brimmed with confidence. But as the clash began, that confidence wavered. The opponent realized quickly that Jin Yeon didn't fight like a merchant's son. He carried the presence of a warrior forged in battle. A powerful strike from Jin Yeon landed before the enemy could react, launching him across the arena. Observers were stunned. Jin Yeon's strength was not a rumor. It was real, disciplined, and overwhelming. And the fight was far from over. Jin Yeon effortlessly overpowered his first opponent, sending him crashing out of the ring. The others looked on in disbelief as Jin Yeon, calm and confident, called for the next challenger. His dominance was clear. One down, and he hadn't even drawn his sword. Two observers stepped forward into the sparring arena, entrusting the companion to care for the elder brother. With calm determination, he faced his opponent, who drew his blade and prepared to fight without restraint. Jin Yeon, standing alone, welcomed the challenge. The duel began with a fierce charge. The swordsman unleashed a powerful slash that cracked the ground, sending shockwaves through the floor. But Jin Yeon responded with precision, parrying the attack barehand. The spectators were stunned. He faced lethal strikes using only his palm. The opponent, a skilled shadow assassin, realized something was wrong. Jin Yeon's hand radiated energy far beyond normal limits. While appearing at the third energy phase, Jin Yeon displayed control and power consistent with the fifth. He effortlessly read and intercepted the sword's flow mid-swing, unnerving his foe. Charging his arm with energy, Jin Yeon advanced. His strike, white lightning roar, erupted with overwhelming force, engulfing the swordsman in a massive blast of blue energy. The floor shattered beneath them. When the dust cleared, the swordsman lay unconscious. Onlookers were shaken. Even the third young master had fallen swiftly. One warrior hesitated, suggesting they end the match, but another stood and refused. The battle was far from over. After witnessing the previous defeat, the blonde-haired martial artist stepped forward with confidence. Though he acknowledged Li Jin Yeon's power, he believed his own palm strike techniques could present a worthy challenge. With a respectful tone, he asked for a sparring match. Jin Yeon, calm and composed, accepted. The match began with high-speed foot and heavy palm exchange. The two clashed with explosive force, each strike sending shockwaves through the floor. Unlike his predecessors, the blonde warrior was agile and aggressive, pressing Jin Yeon with relentless attacks. Yet Jin Yeon's movements remained measured, calmly parrying each blow. Frustrated by Jin Yeon's defensive stance, the warrior launched his signature move, whirling wheel-crushing palm strike. A spiraling wave of chi aimed to break through any guard. Jin Yeon was momentarily caught off guard, but quickly recovered and analyzed the flaw. The opponent's movements were wide and exposed. With precision, Jin Yeon struck back with a devastating counterattack, landing a powerful blow that ended the match decisively. The blonde martial artist collapsed, dazed and defeated. Jin Yeon, smiling gently, praised him for a good duel. From the sideline, others looked on in disbelief. Though it had been an honorable fight, their third and final brother had fallen. Jin Yeon exhaled, his task complete. For now, with all three duels concluded, Li Jin Yeon stood quiet, believing the events had come to an end. However, the tension in the room persisted. From the shadows, Lord Wuyang emerged, his expression sharp and unreadable. Though the duels were over, His displeasure was obvious. Privately, Wuyang Si, the young man he had dismissed, a merchant's heir, had effortlessly defeated all 3 of his elite disciples. Worse still, Jin Yeon's strength appeared beyond even what his own organization could handle. The fear of public embarrassment crept in. If word spread, the reputation of the Rulers' Association would suffer deep. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Jin Yeon was approached for a walk by an elder member of the association, Wuyang Song. The peaceful town offered a quiet setting for their real purpose: recruitment. Wuyang Song directly offered Jin Yeon a place in the Rulers' Association, not as a merchant, but as an individual martial artist, promising protection for his merchant group. As they talked, Wuyang Song revealed their group's murky origin, formed by defectors from the Mirim Alliance, painted as rivals but clearly threatened by Jin Yeon's growing influence. His reputation was already causing waves, but Jin Yeon was unmoved. Calm, he declined the offer if they didn't intend to fight. There was nothing more to discuss. After rejecting the Rulers' Association's proposal, Jin Yeon began walking away, but Wuyang Song called out one final threat. He warned that refusal would lead to the annihilation of the entire Yunha merchant group. He proposed sparing Jin Yeon in exchange for turning him into a public enemy, leveraging the influence of the Wuyang clan. Jin Yeon remained calm, even as Wuyang Song questioned whether he had the strength to oppose them. The threat escalated. Jin Yeon was accused of offending their goodwill. In response, Jin Yeon acted decisively, striking first, and declaring that he had no patience for madness. He challenged Wuyang Song directly, if needed. He would wipe out the entire Wuyang clan. Wuyang Song unleashed a secret technique, Poison Toad Palm Strike, a deadly martial art used by 4 great clans. However, the venomous attack backfired. Jin Yeon's lightning aura burned through the poison upon contact, shocking Wuyang Song. Overwhelmed by the backlash, the elder staggered in pain, realizing his ultimate technique had failed. As Wuyang Song lay injured, Jin Yeon approached. Though tempted to end him, he considered the political cost. Wuyang Song mocked him, warning of public backlash, but Jin Yeon coldly grabbed, issuing a warning. He would ensure Wuyang Song lived long enough to regret his arrogance for the rest of his life. After subduing Wuyang Song, Jin Yeon returned to the central courtyard, where elders and disciples of the clan were gathered. Without hesitation, he cast Wuyang Song's wounded body before the assembly, shocking the onlooker. The patriarch and his son stood in alarm. Jin Yeon declared the man guilty and demanded silence when questioned. The atmosphere turned tense as he revealed the elder still lived. For now, Jin Yeon issued a command to prepare a carriage, treating Wuyang as a prisoner. When asked to explain his action, he dismissed the need for justification. Soon after, he revealed Wuyang Sang's threats, the destruction of the Yunha merchant, and a plot to frame Jin Yeon as the traitor. The gathered martial artists were stunned. Vowing to escalate the matter to the Rulers' Association, Jin Yeon summoned the guards to serve as witnesses. However, a disciple warned him that the association had no formal headquarters. Their leaders instead operated from their clan estates, with the Moyong clan being the closest. Taking charge, Jin Yeon ordered preparations. His men were left to manage the aftermath and report to the Mirim Alliance. Meanwhile, Jin Yeon personally oversaw Wuyang Song's transport, headed straight toward the Moyong clan estate for the next confrontation. While traveling to the Moyong clan estate, Wuyang Song tried to reclaim some dignity, requesting water. However, the guard, loyal to Jin Yeon, refused to oblige without his permission. Amused by the arrogance of a fallen patriarch, one guard mocked the situation. Suddenly, Jin Yeon noticed something off. He swiftly subdued 2 men inside the carriage, exposing them as assassins rather than true warriors of the Wuyang clan. A burst of lightning erupted as he eliminated the threat. The remaining escort panicked, but Jin Yeon assured them to keep moving. He began interrogating the surviving attacker. The man admitted he belonged to the Gold-Silver Assassins, hired mercenaries split into different tiers. Jin Yeon coldly asked how much Wuyang Song had paid, learning it was a small sum per each Eid. Jin Yeon then revealed that the assassin had been betrayed. The money paid included payment for his life too. Wuyang never intended for any of them to survive. Disgusted, Jin Yeon condemned their profession, stating that lives traded for coins had no value. He reminded the assassin that their worth was only as strong as their training, and theirs was cheap. As the sun set, the carriage rolled forward, carrying a broken patriarch, wounded assassins, and Jin Yeon, who finally arrived at the Moyong clan estate. At the entrance of the Moyong clan estate, Jin Yeon's arrival alongside the restrained Wuyang Song drew immediate attention. Clan members questioned the scene, shocked by the condition of the once feared patriarch. Moyong Bin, the current head of the clan, greeted Jin Yeon respectfully, surprised by the situation and unaware of the transition in leadership. Jin Yeon introduced himself as the heir of the Yunha merchant group and clarified the events that led to their arrival. He explained how Wuyang Song had orchestrated an attack using hired assassins and threatened to frame Jin Yeon for the destruction of his own group. The Moyong clan members were stunned by the revelation. Moyong Bin acknowledged the gravity of the offense. He understood that had he been in Jin Yeon's position, he too would have chosen confrontation. Yet, he also recognized the political political risks involved in striking directly at some as powerful as Gu Yangsang and humiliated, erupted in rage, blaming others for his downfall. But Moyong bin silent, unwilling to tolerate further disgrace under his roof. He ordered the assassins imprisoned and extended an apology to Jin Yeon. With tensions settled, he invited Jin Yeon to dine as a guest. Jin Yeon, satisfied, accepted the offer. As night fell, Jin Yeon sat across from Moyong bin at a private dinner. The meal was peaceful, but the tension between the two men was layered with silent thought. Moyong bin remained deeply impressed that the son of a merchant had defeated Yangsang, wondering how such power had emerged so suddenly. Their conversation turned to the resolution of the incident. Jin Yeon calmly stated his plan to deliver Yangsang to the Miram Alliance, allowing them to judge him. This, he reasoned, would shift the Ouyang clan's wrath onto the alliance, sparing the Moyong clan from political retaliation. Moyong bin agreed with the strategy, but the discussion shifted when Jin Yeon asked about the former patriarch. Moyong Chu bin revealed that his father had gone missing over a year ago. Jin Yeon immediately sensed the link. 1 year ago was the time of his own reincarnation. He theorized that Moyong Chu may have died that same day. Jin Yeon asked if the disappearance might be linked to the demonic faction, though they had been silent for 2 decades. Bin admitted the mystery surrounding his father's vanishing felt unnatural. Jin Yeon then revealed something chilling. His attackers bore blade-proof body, a technique not seen since his former life. Jin Yeon reflected on the unnatural resilience of his attackers, men who survived even his 9th phase lightning energy. Such power should be beyond normal warriors, suggesting their bodies had been enhanced to a blade-proof level or greater. He theorized that these mysterious enemies might be aligned with sorcerers or demonic forces. If such groups had united, only beings beyond mortal limits could oppose them. Yet their secrecy raised deeper concerns. Why act from the shadows? Meanwhile, in a distant canyon, a group of formidable figures located their target, the Sword King with Heavenly Demon's confirmation. They prepared to strike. Their mission was clear. It was time to hunt the king.
Rain fell over a grand martial city as tension brewed beneath its serene facade. Rumors of the demonic sect's reappearance had started to stir unease among the higher ranks. Jin Yeon sat deep in thought, frustrated by his fruitless search. Despite his skills, even he could not trace the demonic path's current movements. In a quiet dining hall, he met with an informant to discuss the other top masters. Their whereabouts could hint at the truth behind the growing unrest. The Blade Emperor had recently been seen in good health, known for ignoring offense and acting on his own terms. He had caused tension during a recent meeting, laughing freely while others remained stiff, especially the Chang family head. Meanwhile, the Sword God had gone into closed-door training half a year ago, though his strength had long since reached its peak. The Sword Emperor was untraceable, wandering freely without warning. His state remained unknown to all. The Sword King had retired, dedicating himself to teaching new disciples in isolation. The elusive Fist King, known for his wild nature, remained unaccounted for, perhaps destroying unorthodox sects or roaming in search of worthy successors. Though powerful, the Fist King was never easy to approach. His reputation discouraged familiarity. One questioned why others struggled to bond with him, only to be reminded of his violent temperament. He frequently punished arrogant juniors from the orthodox sects, never tolerating disrespect. The Fist King didn't spare the unorthodox faction either. Senior or not, he crushed any who challenged him. Heretics were met with lethal force, none survived an encounter. Even the heirs of major clans bore bruises from him. He was a storm in human form, feared, unpredictable, and always watching. Jin Yeon remained silent. As Jin Yeon still listened, the informant continued. The Fist King had always been a man of principle, unwavering in his values and promises. He never hesitated to challenge strong opponents, earning both respect and solitude through his unbending warrior's path. His life was not without isolation, but despite outward appearances, not all solitude felt empty to him. As conversation faded into silence, the Fist King dismissed the moment and turned his focus toward the path ahead. When Jin Yeon asked about his next destination, he confirmed a return to the Merchant Guild, unless another matter arose. A suggestion came, an invitation to visit the Miram Alliance. Without hesitation, he agreed, curious about what lay ahead. The next day at the Miram clan, preparations were already underway. The courtyard buzzed with disciplined motion. A new figure, Baek Hangyang of the Miram Alliance, was introduced as a companion for the upcoming journey. With swift instructions, Jin Yeon and Baek were sent ahead while others arranged support and escort from behind. The Fist King entrusted the Galaxy Merchant Guild to capable hands during his absence, ensuring its safety and continuity. Jin Yeon's reassurance came that the Moyong clan's warriors were already in place to protect the trading company. In return, the Fist King promised not to forget their kindness and revealed intel on a group known as the Silver Blood Assassins. He requested the Emperor's assembly to investigate the organization, offering his own strength if their base was discovered. Jin Yeon quietly admitted he had expected resistance from the Moyong clan, but instead found understanding and support, grateful for the clan leader's wisdom. He departed in peace, leaving behind only words of sincere thanks. With swift movements, the two men departed, leaping over rooftops under the morning light. Left behind, the clan leader quietly admired Jin Yeon's growth and composure, recognizing his potential. 4 days later, Their journey brought them to a bustling city at the foot of snow-peaked mountains. Bayek Hangyang reflected on their quiet journey, noting the Fist King's silence mirrored his own blunt nature. Despite traveling for days, their few words were limited to necessary decisions and brief pauses. In the busy marketplace, Hangyang apologized as he bumped into someone, finally breaking the silence again. Suddenly, Hangyang's eyes fixed on a wanted poster with a familiar face labeled as an enemy of the martial world. Recognizing the target as an immoral guest, he calmly informed his companion of the situation. Deciding to act immediately, Hangyang stepped forward to confront the threat, warning the Fist King to stay close. A commotion spread through the market as people scattered, panicked by the unexpected presence of danger. Hangyang observed the chaos with frustration, knowing such incidents had become common within the Alliance's territory. He recalled rumors of heretics ambushing Alliance members, their growing boldness becoming an open threat. The wanted heretic appeared in plain sight, moving through the crowd without any fear of being recognized. Hangyang suspected a trap as two others flanked the target, drawing weapons in anticipation. His instincts confirmed the setup. Both enemies were missing arms, likely survivors of a prior encounter with the Fist King. The mutilated men confronting Bayek were survivors of a past battle against the Alliance chief, now used as bait feigning civility. The enemy mocked the Alliance's brutality while admitting to retaliating by sending severed heads. Unbothered by their threats, Hangyang stood firm as the situation darkened. The confrontation escalating with tension. Elsewhere, chaos erupted as a frustrated man realized he had been excluded from the plan to meet the Moyang clan elder. The guards attempted to explain, but he ranted loudly, demanding answers about the sudden departure, confused and abandoned. He sat on the ground, recalling a vague agreement of delivering 100,000 strikes. Driven by frustration, he threatened to cause a scene if not given clear orders from his peers. But the others dismissed him, telling him to chase down the matter directly if it mattered so much. Realizing he had been left behind, he rushed off, muttering about the others heading toward the Murim Alliance. Angry and insecure, he tried to convince himself he wasn't being treated like a fool. Declaring his identity as Venom Fox, he resolved to storm the Murim Alliance alone. With a dramatic charge, he shouted his resolve, ready to add another strike beyond the 100,000 he already boasted. Jin Yeon suddenly appears behind a group moving silently through the alley, startling them with his unexpected presence. Hangyang turns around, shocked by how Jin Yeon managed to catch up without them noticing. Smirking confidently, Jin Yeon introduces himself as someone who enjoys beating people up, making his intentions clear. One of the men demands to know who Jin Yeon is, clearly irritated by the intrusion. Hangyang, still surprised, wonders when Jin Yeon began trailing them. Mocking laughter erupts from the group as another man steps forward, belittling Jin Yeon's threat and dismissing him as trash. A man claims he only lured Jin Yeon in and now needs to leave. Attempting to avoid conflict, another man calmly asks if public enemies can be executed immediately. He confirms that Murim Alliance laws permit execution on the spot if the information is verified. Hangyang reflects on how this moment marks Jin Yeon's first genuine smile in days of travel. Jin Yeon, pleased by the tension, expresses satisfaction with the confrontation. Enemies charge at him together, aiming to kill. The knife was thrown to him. Jin Yeon catches the thrown daggers midair with smooth precision. With swift, fluid motion, he redirects the blades back toward the attackers. Hiss! Counterattack strikes all three men, leaving them wounded and screaming in agony. One attacker, realizing he's been isolated, panics at Jin Yeon's calculated violence, believing he was targeted alone. As he powers up, he attempts a counterattack, his arm glowing ominously with energy. Jin Yeon counters swiftly, grabbing the enemy's cursed hand and challenging his motive for the attack. With cold precision, Jin Yeon twists the man's empowered limb, ignoring his opponent's scream. He demands to know where the man is going, overpowering his retreat and keeping him pinned. The attacker crumbles in pain, overwhelmed by the force that crushed his arm. Wounded and desperate, the man surrenders, promising to face justice at the Murim Alliance. As Jin Yeon approaches, the man tries to bribe his life by offering intel on other operations. He reveals that surrender will close his case, hoping it will protect him from execution. Before the man can finish, Jin Yeon strikes decisively, ignoring the plea for mercy. He calmly states he isn't part of the Murim Alliance, and thus has no need for surrender. With the enemies defeated, Jin Yeon questions whether he should have spared the man after all. Hangyang advises against regret, reminding him the man had it coming. The two continue walking toward their next destination, focused and composed. Later, in a tavern, Jin Yeon receives praise for his skills, while Hangyang acknowledges his refined combat instinct. Hangyang admits that he initially doubted Jin Yeon's victory over the Ouyang family's leader due to Jin Yeon's unknown reputation. However, after witnessing the fight, he acknowledges Jin Yeon's skill as genuine and worthy of respect. Hangyang offers to personally vouch for Jin Yeon's abilities, if testimony is ever needed, earning Jin Yeon's appreciation. Hangyang proposes that Jin Yeon should consider joining the Murim Alliance, intrigued by his potential. He explains that while the alliance offers little comfort or wealth, it rewards ability regardless of background. Noting Jin Yeon's skill and connections to the Emperor Assembly, he suggests Jin Yeon could gain much from the alliance. Hangyang contrasts the Murim Alliance with the Emperor Assembly, emphasizing their differing values and systems. He warns that outsiders rarely succeed within the assembly, as it prioritizes great clan members. He concludes that when real conflict erupts, assembly members vanish, lacking the courage to face chaos. Jin Yeon still listened. A man nearby agrees that Jin Yeon made the right choice, affirming his standing through testimony. Jin Yeon accepts the reality that the assembly lacks fairness, while another woman listens in silence. Yoonwol, sitting with Yoon-sol, mocks the conversation, sarcastically labeling the Miram group the Slander Alliance. Yoonwol warns them not to insult others under such false labels. Pressing him to act civilly, Han-young admits he may have spoken rashly and requests the man's name to apologize correctly. Yoonwol responds flamboyantly, stating his name is Autumn Wind, Wild, laughing theatrically as tension lingers. Yoon-sil observes silently while Yoonwol accepts Baek Han-young's apology with a graceful nod. Jin Yeon acknowledges the closure of their misunderstanding and redirects focus to the suspicious pair nearby. Yoonwol suspects the strangers are from the Emperor Assembly, likely drawn to the city for the Dragon Phoenix tournament. Han-young asks if Jin Yeon is interested in the tournament. Noting his martial strength and youth, he encourages participation, explaining the tournament's prestige and wide recognition among the martial world. Jin Yeon declines at first, stating that reputation forms naturally, but changes his mind when he hears about a rare elixir reward. Jin Yeon agrees to enter the tournament, surprising Han-young with his sudden shift in attitude. Han-young teases him lightly, saying he should have mentioned the elixir first to avoid confusion. As they prepare to leave the inn, the group is reminded they're close to the Miram Alliance grounds. Yoonwol expresses annoyance, mocking the slow pace of the Miram group and labeling them sluggish. Han-young quietly fumes at the insult, realizing Yoonwol is still bitter from earlier, to save face. Yoonwol challenges them to a speed match, suggesting Yoon-sil and others to rush forward like the autumn wind. Yoonwol dashes out, leaving behind a trail of stirred dust, clearly aiming to provoke. As Yoon-sil watches the dust cloud, she's told to follow behind more slowly with the others. Intent on proving himself, Yoonwol accelerates across cliffs and ravines, chasing Jin Yeon and Han-young at full speed. As the group nears the Miram Alliance gate, Jin Yeon gracefully leaps over a wide cliff and lands first on the other side. Han-young is stunned, struggling to comprehend Jin Yeon's incredible speed and technique. Despite his effort to keep up, Han-young is left breathless, questioning how Jin Yeon moved so fast. Han-young and Yoonwol push themselves harder, realizing that Jin Yeon might actually win the impromptu race. Their feet pound against the rocky terrain, closing the final gap with one last desperate leap. Both land heavily near the gate. Moments after Jin Yeon, who waits calmly without a trace of exhaustion. Han-young gasps for air, claiming he barely won, while Yoonwol taunts him with a sly remark. Jin Yeon, unimpressed, questions the point of the competition, showing no concern for their efforts. The alliance leader steps forward and declares the winner, pointing clearly at Jin Yeon, leaving the others speechless. The alliance leader arrives, praising Han-young's efforts as they gather at the entrance. Yoonwol introduces himself formally as a member of the HWA clan, showing proper etiquette. The leader identifies Jin Yeon as the young master of the Galaxy Merchant Guild. Recognizing his reputation, the leader introduces himself as Jianghu of the Miram Alliance and greets everyone. He confirms their participation in the Dragon Phoenix tournament and offers words of encouragement. Jianghu expresses his intention to accompany them to the tournament grounds, and the group accepts. Yoonwol pauses to address Jin Yeon, confirming their next meeting will be during the tournament. Jin Yeon remains silent as the alliance leader casually comments on Han-young's late arrival. Han-young protests the judgment, believing their arrival times were nearly the same. Jianghu speculates that Yoonwol deliberately held back to conserve strength and measure rivals. He lightly teases Han-young for pushing himself unnecessarily to keep pace. Jin Yeon confirms the tactic was expected, noting that most fighters hold back before duels. The group shares a brief laugh as they continue walking together toward the tournament site. The Miram Alliance headquarters comes into view, towering over the city at sunset. They enter the tournament hall and are formally greeted by other waiting participants. The alliance leader instructs everyone to leave except Jin Yeon, who is asked to remain behind. He assures Jin Yeon that the issue with the Weyang family will be evaluated fairly based on his abilities. As the others exit the hall, Jin Yeon walks forward alone, responding to the alliance leader's summons. Jin Yeon silently approaches as Jianghu. The alliance leader watches him with familiarity, reflects on Jianghu's legendary feats in the Five Dragons War, where he led the fight against the demonic sect. His command over the Orthodox faction and alliance with the three divine stars established his unshakable reputation. Jiang praises Jin Yeon's serious demeanor and expresses a preference for such honest expressions. He notes that Jin Yeon's outer attitude reflects his inner strength, which he respects. Jianghu shares a laugh and tells Jin Yeon he appears even better when smiling. As they walk, Jianghu reveals his suspicion about Jin Yeon's master and asks if he trained under the Fist King. Jin Yeon shows slight surprise as Jianghu presses further, asking if he learned any techniques from the Fist King. The meeting between the Fist King's successor and the alliance leader began. Jianghu quickly deduces Jin Yeon's background from his use of fist and lightning-based techniques. He explains that in the martial world, only 4 sects are known for mastering lightning chi. He names Esioman, Namgung, Baikri, and Oreo, adding that Baikri eventually gave up martial arts altogether. Jianghu explains that the only remaining sect is Oreo, the origin of the Fist King's legacy. He notes that the Oreo sect's methods focus on a single successor, not a wide lineage. Jin Yeon confirms the truth, declaring himself the official successor of the Fist King. Jianghu smiled to hear that. Jianghu observes that Jin Yeon shares an uncanny resemblance to the Fist King. He describes how those who master lightning chi develop an imposing presence and electric intensity. Reflecting on the Fist King's solitary nature, he admits the man lived apart from bonds, focused only on transcending limits. Jin Yeon asks about the Fist King's current state, wondering if he's still alive. Jianghu reveals there's been no words similar to the silence surrounding Moyang Chu of the Moyang clan. Jin Yeon clarifies that the connection to the Fist King has been permanently severed. Jianghu plans to inform the three divine stars about the severed connection. He speculates that the demonic sect may be making moves again, posing a growing threat. He recalls the ancient Five Dragons War and warns they may have to fight again. He recounts the battle where a single demonic grandmaster pushed the three divine stars to the edge. Remembering the sword god's isolation, he connects it to those dark times. Calling it a hidden history, he urges the next generation to grow stronger in preparation. Jianghu spoke with calm authority, mentioning the age a potential descendant of the demonic sect's grandmaster would be now. Drawing Jin Yeon's attention, he placed a firm grip on Jin Yeon's bandaged hand, his voice low, carrying the weight of expectation and responsibility. Jianghu demanded strength, not just any strength, but one that was absolute and selfish, built to overcome all threats. He assured Jin Yeon that the issue with Ouyang Salmon was resolved, and that he recognized Jin as the rightful successor of the Fist King. As the towering hall loomed behind them, Jianghu mentioned the upcoming Dragon Phoenix tournament, encouraging Jin Yeon to rest and prepare. Under a starry night sky, Jin Yeon walked alone past the silent buildings, his thoughts burdened with the task ahead. Jin Yeon paused outside, his expression thoughtful, burdened by questions about the Grandmaster, who once stood alone against the divine stars. Jianghu responded ambiguously, dismissing the need for a name for someone who embodied the pinnacle of the demonic path. Unconvinced, Jin Yeon pressed further, questioning whether that man was truly dead. The elder described how the Grandmaster was cut down repeatedly, his body ultimately burned, reduced to scattered ashes. Those ashes were divided and spread across 5 great mountains to ensure no trace remained. Still, Jianghu warned that if this new crisis was linked to that legacy, he would personally erase even the ashes. Jin Yeon reflected on Jianghu standing alone in the Great Hall, no longer a hero but a remnant of an unforgiving era. He realized that both he and the Alliance leader had become products of chaos, shaped into something inhuman by necessity. In a world ruled by endless conflict between orthodox and demonic paths, Jin saw no difference from the Asura realm. After leaving the Grand Hall, Jin Yeon was approached by Baek Hangyang, who confirmed the conversation had gone well. Hangyang, concerned for Jin Yeon's comfort, revealed he had arranged lodging outside the Alliance compound and offered to escort him there. Under the moonlit sky, they passed through the glowing village streets until they arrived at a peaceful residence. Hangyang explained he had requested a room with ample sunlight, eager to ensure Jin Yeon's comfort. Inside, an unfamiliar voice greeted them, catching both off guard. A man was already occupying the space. As Jin Yeon stepped forward, he recognized the man, someone who had been searching for him persistently. The man stretched out, casually impressed by the size of the room, but irritated by his own exhaustion. He complained about his long journey, admitting he'd lost sleep tracking Jin Yeon down. He had visited every inn, asking if anyone named Lee Jin Yeon had checked in. With determination, he stood and declared that he had completed a promise: 100,000 repetitions of an unnamed task. He emphasized that he was a man who kept his word, no matter the hardship. Now standing tall, he revealed he had come by land and sea to deliver the next challenge. Personally, Jin Yeon and Hangyang stood before the man, commanding their attention as the training session concluded. He expected their readiness for the next task. Hangyang, reflecting on the need for a better training site, quietly asked if there was a suitable location nearby. Jin Yeon considered the request. Jin Yeon confirmed knowledge of a place. Without delay, they departed, heading toward a remote location known only to a few martial artists. The two arrived at a hidden valley nestled between mountains. Jin Yeon pointed to the clearing ahead, noting its ideal conditions. The man explained that the site was rarely visited, even by the Murim Alliance, making it perfect for undisturbed training. They examined the area with ample space and isolation. Jin Yeon agreed it was suitable. Other allies soon joined them. As Chul Myungo introduced himself, Jin Yeon prepared to begin his own training. Hangyang questioned the need for further practice. Jin Yeon replied that relying solely on the white lightning technique was limiting. He intended to expand his mastery. His focus shifted to deepening inner energy and training in the Phantom Blossom Divine Art, a style requiring precision and control. Jin Yeon began his explanation. The white lightning art focused on overwhelming offense through direct power. But strength alone was not enough. A true martial artist needed to control and redirect an opponent's attack. He described how redirection allowed a fighter to exploit weaknesses, rather than meet strength with strength. The Phantom Blossom Divine Art emphasized technique over force, enabling the user to manipulate the enemy's movements. Its ultimate secret, Phantom Reach, allowed interaction with weapons or objects from a distance without contact. Chul Myung-go recognized its value. As a close combat fighter, this ability offered him a strategic advantage in any battle. Jin Yeon stepped to the water's edge, gently placing a flowered branch upon its surface. His focus sharpened, knowing what this technique required. He explained its necessity. In a world of deadly martial arts, subtlety and control were as vital as raw strength. Chul Myung-go struggled to understand. His attempt to label it as a trick was swiftly dismissed as a flash of power surged around him. Jin Yeon stood alone again, lightning circling his form. He reminded Chul Myung-go not to analyze deeply with a dull mind. Chul Myung-go responded with reluctant acceptance. The effort hadn't been wasted. His body showed signs of growth, if not insight. Their exchange turned casual, but Jin Yeon knew more discipline was needed. Chul Myung-go's effort lacked refined understanding from the beginning. Jin Yeon reflected on why he accepted Chul Myung-go as a student. He had seen potential but not certainty. Chul Myung-go had yet to prove he could seize that chance. Jin Yeon decided to increase the difficulty. He clarified, from all the countless strikes practiced, only one would hold real value. A swing came fast. Jin Yeon didn't flinch. He stressed the importance of choosing the most efficient strike in combat. Only through mastery of optimal motion could one survive real confrontation. Anything less led to defeat. Chul Myung-go absorbed the lesson. The concept of efficiency now sat at the center of his focus. Jin Yeon described the deeper principle, finding the single best movement among countless attempts. That strike would be refined, connected, and repeated until a complete form was forged. With relentless repetition and correction, that form would evolve into true combat mastery. Swordsmanship. Chul Myung-go questioned whether learning swordsmanship was enough. Jin Yeon clarified that real combat required more than form. It demanded lived experience. He explained that experience forged understanding, and without it, even perfect technique meant little. Chul Myung-go slumped down in exhaustion and realization. He laughed, acknowledging the madness of martial training. Jin Yeon reassured him that advanced sword arts weren't his teaching goal. He had chosen a different approach. He spoke of martial artists who trained in elite sects with rich resources, but warned that their paths weren't the only way. As Chul Myung-go, Jin Yeon stated that true strength wasn't defined by sect affiliation or famous teachers. It came from something deeper. He stood before Chul Myung-go and said it depended on one factor, who treated their training as a matter of life and death. As footsteps approached, the elder and Han Yang arrived unexpectedly, interrupting the moment of instruction. Han Yang apologized to the approaching elder, realizing the new arrival held authority over the area. The elder dismissed the concern. He was simply observing their training with interest. Chul Myung-go brought up famous sword arts, specifically mentioning the revered Dog So's 9 sword strikes. Jin Yeon mentioned a greater sword art, one known to surpass even the most elite techniques. He revealed it was the sword art of Jin Sohan, a figure obsessed with the blade. Though unknown to Chul Myung-go, Jin Sohan's story held key insights into the martial world's complexity. Jin Sohan was raised in a performer troupe, learning swordplay through dance with the women who raised him. Jin Sohan, once a child of a performing troupe, spent his youth perfecting sword dancing, unaware of where it would lead him. He lived as an orphan with no place in the world, training alone to avoid harming others with the blade. But when the time came to wield a killing sword, everything he had held back surged forward, unlocking overwhelming potential. He surpassed the most renowned sword techniques and founded a new path, one born from his unique experiences. Chul Myung-go admired the tale, but Jin Yeon reminded him that greatness came from dedication, not just origins or methods. The story's meaning was simple. Strength was shaped by how one chose to live, not where one trained. Jin Yeon challenged Chul Myung-go to define his path. The question wasn't just about power, but the kind of person he would become. Chul Myung-go asked for the next step, ready to continue without hesitation or regret. Jin Yeon accepted his resolve. Their training resumed immediately, swift and forceful. Jin Yeon launched into motion with blinding speed, demonstrating the tri-sword technique in full force. Chul Myung-go watched in awe as the elder observer commented on Jin Yeon's extraordinary skills. He vowed to continue training, willing to repeat his strikes not just thousands, but 1,000,000 times over. The elder smiled quietly, reflecting on the joy of watching such pure martial exchange once more. He recalled his past, the years in the Miram Alliance, and the comrades he had once shared the path with. Now, most were gone, leaving him surrounded by shadows and memories of those who no longer stood beside him. Chul Myung-go stood quietly, unsure about the stone's alignment, still absorbing the earlier lesson. Above, the elder looked out over the cliff and decided to offer a reward, moved by the training session. Below, birds watched as Jin Yeon resumed his stance. The atmosphere had shifted. Chul Myung-go prepared his energy. Jin Yeon's form began to radiate stronger pressure. With a single motion, Jin Yeon levitated rocks through sheer control and focus. Chul Myung-go was stunned. Jin Yeon had started using telekinesis.